This kid just got reborn inside a dating sim, and he's only got one mission to pull off. He's got to save his favorite character, the tragic villain Sophia, after she narrowly escaped her own execution. He's using every single trick he remembers from his past life. He ends up becoming her super loyal butler, and the guy who does everything for her. He's doing everything he can to keep her from falling into the dark side. He pulls it off way better than he ever imagined. He caught her before she could fall and made sure she'd always be happy. But then, things took a super dark turn. He figures it all out the moment he saves her from the prince. Now he's the brand new target of her totally insane obsession. Now he's the only target for the crazy villainess he created himself. This kid introduces himself to Lady Sophia as Cyril, but she's totally suspicious of that name while he acts all formal and calls her my lady. Cyril finally spills the truth. He only became a butler to stop Lady Sophia from getting executed. He explains that he's actually been reborn inside an old game he used to play called the Espressivo of Light and Darkness. This is 6-year-old Sophia Rosenberg, a noble daughter engaged to the prince, while Cyril suddenly remembers his past life in a high-tech world where he actually studied magic. Cyril knows that once the prince hits 16, he's gonna fall for the main girl and Sophia will totally lose herself to the darkness. She gets super jealous and starts bullying the heroine, but the prince catches her red-handed and has her and her butler executed for all their crimes. Cyril knows all this because his sister was a total gaming nerd in his past life who forced him to play this exact Otomi game, and he's dead serious when he reveals that the butler is actually the one who gets executed right alongside her. It's actually him, and Cyril is ready to do whatever it takes to stop this future from ever happening. Avoiding his execution sounds like a piece of cake, but there's a massive catch that changes everything. He admits Sophia is his absolute favorite because even though she's a villain, she's actually got a heart of gold, and her tragic past of being bullied by maids was literally made to make players feel sorry for her. So he decides he's got to save her from that dark future too, bowing down with a whole new fire in his eyes. To save her, he's got to stop her from turning evil by fixing her trauma, while also making her so charming that the prince won't get stolen by the main heroine. Cyril knows there's a huge challenge waiting for him later, but right now he's laser-focused on winning Sophia's trust and saving her from her dark future, because if he waits until he's 15 like in the original story, it'll be way too late. Using his game knowledge and raw talent, he proved he was on another level and landed the apprentice butler job at just 6 years old. Sophia asks what a butler even is, so Cyril explains there's someone who does everything for you and never leaves your side, and when she asks if he'll stay forever, he drops to one knee and promises he's not going anywhere. On Sophia's birthday, Cyril promises to always protect her no matter what, so she shyly asks if he'll celebrate the big day with her. Cyril fixes his suit with a warm smile, promising her that they're gonna celebrate her birthday together this year, and every single year after that. He hands Lady Sophia a single, perfect rose and wishes her a happy 6th birthday. Sophia is totally glowing as she takes the rose and thanks him, and while Cyril feels like he's finally earned her trust, he knows he's only just started his mission to change her fate. He knows his next big move is to get rid of that toxic maid who keeps bullying Sophia and making everyone else in the mansion hate her. Sophia runs straight to Cyril in tears, crying about the head maid being a total jerk again, while he stays super sweet and offers to wipe her face. The maid snaps back and says Sophia just tripped, calling her a total liar while the other maids start gossiping about how she can't be trusted. The head maid gets this super creepy look and snaps at Sophia for being a liar, while the poor girl looks totally shocked and keeps swearing she's telling the truth. Cyril jumps in front of Sophia and warns the maid that a Rosenberg servant should never turn on their master. The maid tries to brush Cyril off by calling Sophia a brat, but he claps back, saying she's just taking her own anger out on a kid with a bunch of lies. The maid just smirks and asks who's actually gonna believe some kid over a loyal servant like her, acting like the answer is totally obvious. Cyril stays totally chill and says it doesn't matter who's more trusted, because a servant betraying their master is something that can never be forgiven. Guards jump out of nowhere and grab the confused maid as she screams, demanding to know what the heck is going on. Cyril pulls out a serious-looking letter, proving that he and the head butler Cedric investigated her and caught her red-handed for stealing the money. The maid is totally shocked when she's accused of stealing, but Cyril tells her to stop playing dumb because he knows she's been faking the prices on all the house supplies. He looks the terrified maid in the eye and tells her she's a slave for life now, even though she begs that it was only a tiny amount. Cyril mocks her, asking if she even knows how numbers work since her idea of a small amount is totally insane. He flashes the proof and calls her out for totally trashing the girl's reputation by labeling her a liar. He asks if she really thinks she's more trustworthy than him or the young lady now that everyone knows she's been lying and stealing from the house. Cyril looks dead serious as she tells her she completely betrayed her master's trust in the worst way possible. The maid looks totally crushed when Cyril tells her she's officially done at the mansion. Cyril turns to Sophia and tells her everything's okay now because that mean maid is finally gone for good. Sophia is so relieved she just throws her arms around Cyril and squeezes him tight. Sophia starts crying happy tears while thanking Cyril for always having her back, and he just calmly tells her it was a total no-brainer. From then on, Cyril went all out to turn Sophia into a proper lady of the Rosenberg family, teaching her everything from how to walk and dance to playing the violin and sewing. She spent the next 6 years teaching her secret past life magic and self-defense, and the girl soaked up every single lesson without ever complaining. Sophia's all grown up and elegant now, and she asks Cyril to brush her hair for her. While Cyril gets her hairbrush ready, he mentions her 12th birthday is coming up fast, leaving Sophia wondering if her super busy parents will even show up to celebrate with her. Sophia tells herself she's totally fine with her parents being busy because she's got their gifts and messages, but most importantly, she has Cyril right by her side. He realizes that the lonely girl from the game is officially gone, and he tells Sophia that the whole mansion staff is right there with him to wish her a happy birthday. Sophia blushes and admits that celebrating with him is the best thing ever, and Cyril just tells her the pleasure is all his. He leaves her room feeling totally confident that he saved her from a dark future and set her up to win the prince's heart. But there's still one huge obstacle in the way. In the original story, the second prince saves the girl from a total creep at a party, and even though they don't know who the other is, that instant spark only gets stronger when they meet again at the academy. Cyril looks totally locked in and swears he's going to crush any chance of that meeting ever happening. He's standing in this massive, fancy ballroom, knowing this is his one shot to save Sophia's future and make sure nobody steals the prince from her. Sophia's 12 now and looking stunning in her gown, so she calls out Cyril for trailing behind and tells him he should be walking right by her side with some pride. Carol is totally stunned because having a commoner butler as an escort is unheard of, since that's usually a job for family or a fiancé. He sees how nervous she is and realizes she only picked him because he's the only one she actually trusts to keep her safe. Sophia snaps him out of his thoughts, turns around, and asks if she looks beautiful. Sarah tells her she looks totally stunning, but Sophia's just thinking that as long as he sees her that way, nobody else's opinion even matters. She asks if he thinks she's pretty too, and he just smiles, admitting he's totally under her spell and loves how much she's grown up. The guests nearby are all whispering about how the Marquis's daughter is basically perfect, praising her for being gorgeous, super smart, and way more mature than everyone else. Sero is grinning because his big entrance was a total hit, right when a white-haired guy politely asks to get past him. Cyril and Sophia are totally blown away when they realize Al is actually the second prince, Alforth, trying to hide his true identity. Sophia drops a super smooth curtsy and introduces herself as a member of the Rosenberg family. Cyril watches them with a proud smile, knowing 6 years of hard work led to this exact moment where Sophia's first love finally kicks off. The prince asks Sophia for a dance, making Cyril freak out because she's supposed to dance with her escort first, but rejecting a prince would totally ruin her reputation. Sophia looks at Cyril for a sign, and after he gives her a quick nod of approval, she decides to go for it. She tells Cyril she's only dancing with the prince for one song and promises she'll be right back. As they hit the dance floor, Sophia tells Al she's super hyped to dance, and he's so nervous he can barely stammer out a yes. Everyone in the ballroom is staring at the gorgeous couple in the center, whispering about how good they look and dying to know who the mysterious guy is. The two of them look amazing dancing together while the whole crowd watches, and Sophia is totally blushing as she stares at the handsome prince. Sorrel watches Sophia and the prince dance from the sidelines, feeling totally hyped that the villainess who was supposed to be executed is finally gone for good. Sophia is having a blast dancing with the prince, and Cyril thinks his job is finally done. But then he spots a creepy nobleman bothering a girl and realizes he's got one more problem to handle. Cyril looks at the scene and realizes that since he changed his lady's future, he's officially saved his own neck from being executed. Cyril jumps in right as some noble tries to pressure a girl into leaving the party, telling the guy to back off because she's clearly uncomfortable. The noble totally snaps and asks Cyril how he dares to talk back, bragging that he's the son of the powerful Count Reed. Cyril threatens to snitch to his dad, which shuts the guy up and sends him storming off while Cyril turns to make sure the girl is okay. Wait, the girl he just saved is actually Alicia, the game's main heroine, and Cyril realizes that by pushing the prince towards Sophia, he totally stole the prince's spot in this huge scene. Alicia stammers out a thank you while Cyril checks if she's okay, thinking he couldn't just ditch her because he'd feel way too guilty if she ended up turning evil. Shyly reveals she's actually Alicia, the daughter of Viscount Lindbergh, then looks at him with big, curious eyes and sweetly asks for his name. Pearl is totally caught off guard because he remembers that in the game, she and the prince were supposed to split up without ever finding out each other's names. Cyril tries to act low-key by saying he's just a butler, but Alicia is totally hooked on his name and tells him she doesn't care about his rank since her family isn't super fancy anyway, while Cyril just apologizes for the awkward vibes. She admits she doesn't know a single soul there, so shyly asks him if he'd be down to hit the dance floor with her. Cyril is totally thrown off because the game says her first dance shouldn't happen until way later, and it's super weird for a noble girl to have never danced before. He knows it's a huge social no-no for a girl to ask a guy to dance, but he doesn't want to leave her hanging, so he sucks it up and says yes. They start dancing together, and a nearby noble and his smiling friend can't take their eyes off them. Cyril keeps a polite smile on his face, but inside, he's completely lost about how things just flipped. Alicia's a total klutz and accidentally stomps right on his foot, but while she's apologizing like crazy, he just tells her not to worry about it. She keeps saying sorry over and over while they trip over their feet, looking totally embarrassed by her mistake. Cyril tells her to just take a breath and tries to distract her by asking all about her family's territory. Delicious's face totally lights up as she talks about her home being this incredible place with massive fields of flowers everywhere. Cyril's heart skips a beat as he tells her she looks even better when she smiles, making her totally blush as she thanks him. While the music plays, Alicia is low-key worried that she spent the whole dance stepping all over the prince's feet. The music wraps up with a big finish, and as everyone starts clapping, Cyril gives Alicia a respectful bow. Alicia thanks him for the dance, and just as he's being nice back, a voice from behind them shouts, "I finally found you!" Sophia runs up totally out of breath and looking super worried, but Cyril is just shocked and tells her she didn't need to come looking for him. She gets totally fed up and demands to know why he couldn't just stay put like she told him to. Everyone instantly drops to their knees to apologize, thinking she's fuming about the dance and assuming the prince must have stepped on her toes because of how aggressive she sounds. Sophia stares him down with a super creepy look, demanding to know why he won't even look her in the eye. He's totally frozen because she's saying the exact same words from her villainous turn in the game, but now she's aiming them right at him. A scary thought hits him. Did he just accidentally steal the prince's spot in this messed up story? Sophia looks totally heartbroken as she begs him to say this is all just a bad dream, reminding him that he promised to never leave her side. She totally loses it and asks if that other girl is better than her, while Cyril panics and tries to explain he was just helping Alicia out of a tough spot. Alicia backs him up, but Sophia only cares about how sweet Cyril is, which totally freaks him out because his biggest nightmare is actually happening. Sophia gets this super possessive look in her eyes and tells him to save all his kindness just for her, making Cyril straight up choke. Now he knows for sure that Sophia is totally in love with him, but since they come from such different worlds, their romance is basically impossible. That disaster he thought he stopped is back and way worse now that Sophia is getting super jealous of the heroine. Cyril tries to stay cool while looking at the total mess he made, thinking that even if she turns evil, she's skilled enough to take out her target and get away with it. The scary truth finally hits him. Since the heroine isn't into him, he's the one who's going to get absolutely destroyed by Sophia's jealousy. He starts panicking because he remembers that in every single game route, Sophia gets super jealous and turns evil no matter who the guy is, meaning she's basically destined to go to the dark side. He suddenly realizes with total terror that by taking the prince's place, he's now the only target of her insane rage. The story ends with Cyril looking completely shook as he realizes he's the only one getting eliminated. Cyril just realized he's been reborn into a massive game called Aspersivo of Light and Darkness, and he's stuck playing the butler to the story's total villain. He remembers using his pro-game knowledge to dodge every death flag that would have gotten Lady Sophia executed, which all started when she fell for the prince at a party. He tried his best to keep things on track, but the party ended in total chaos when Alicia asked him to dance, and a stunned Sophia demanded to know why he was ignoring her. Standing outside the massive Rosenberg mansion, Cyril cringes as he wonders how everything went so wrong, and why Sophia is totally obsessed with him instead of the prince. He gives a polite knock and heads into the study to face Sophia's dad. Inside his study, the super serious leader of the Rosenberg family is hard at work at his desk. Grieve asks why Cyril waited so long to jump in, and Cyril just says he saw his master look his way and knew he'd already been spotted. Grief is totally blown away by the kid's sharp eyes, knowing it's all thanks to his butler training since he was 6, and now it's time to talk about what went down at the party. Dave says he wants to talk about Ciro being Sophia's escort, and the poor butler starts looking totally freaked out. Grief tries to thank Cyril for all his help, but Cyril refuses any reward, insisting he totally failed since Sophia had to leave the group early. Cyril takes the fall for the whole mess, claiming he's the reason Sophia feels sick and that he totally ruined her reputation. Steve just brushes him off, saying a bunch of other kids left early too and it's really no big deal. Grieve says it was actually a smart move to leave, because her dance with the second prince was making everyone in the room stare way too much. Cyril asks what the big deal is, and Grieve starts geeking out with pride, shouting that his daughter was dancing like a total angel. This proud dad is totally obsessed, just repeating the word angel over and over because he's so hyped about his daughter. The royal is super glad Sophia's reputation is still safe, but he's still beating himself up for failing his job as her escort. Grieve stares at Cyril and admits that he's so mature it's hard to believe he's actually just a kid. Things get serious when Grieve asks Cyril what he really thinks about the second prince. Cyril is totally stunned when he realizes this question is about way more than just the prince liking Sophia's looks. Grieve admits he's thinking about marrying Sophia off to the second prince, and he wants to hear Cyril's take before he makes a final choice. Cyril thinks he should just keep quiet, but Grieve tells him his take is actually the key to making the final call. Cyril is totally stuck between his mission to hook Sophia up with the prince and the fact that she's actually into him, and he just can't bring himself to break her heart. He has to remind himself that his real job is just being a personal butler in training. He tells Grieve straight up that his only job is making Sophia happy, so her own feelings about getting married are the only thing that actually matters. Grieve lets out a surprised sound, totally caught off guard by how gutsy the young butler's answer was. He thinks it's crazy to ask a girl's opinion on a political marriage, but Cyril shuts him down and says her happiness is the only thing that matters. Grieve smirks and says that answer is totally boring, but suddenly, his hand starts glowing with magic. Out of nowhere, Grieve announces that Cyril actually passed the test and is officially his new personal butler. Zero freezes in shock for a second before dropping to one knee to accept his new rank. Breathe reveals the whole thing was just a test, and since he finally trusts Cyril with his daughter, he hands him an invite to Lawnbell Royal Academy so they can head off together. Carol grabs the papers without a second thought, announcing he's becoming a student just to stay by his lady's side as her loyal butler. Later on, Cyril helps Sophia study for her big exams and gives her props for totally nailing a super hard formula. He knows she'll breeze through the exam, but she has to get the top score to keep her family's reputation alive. Cyril doesn't have a second to celebrate his promotion because the real test starts at the academy, where he has to push Sophia back toward the prince to make sure she stays happy. He knows the academy is the best place to fix everything, but he's gotta stay sharp because one major threat is still lurking. He knows that having the heroine Alicia around is only going to make Sophia's villain flags pop up way faster. Luckily, he remembers a side story from the game where Alicia joins the school later, so she won't be in the junior division at all. Sophia snaps him out of his head and teases him, asking if he's the one who's actually stressed about the big exams. He tries to respond, but she just teases him and says he's the one acting nervous, making him realize she's totally over all that party drama. They head off to the academy, and Cyril knows these next 3 years are his only shot to finally fix everything. Exam day is finally here, and they're standing right in front of the massive Lawnbell Royal Academy. Cyril tells Sophia he's gotta go check the seats, and she's totally hyped to tag along. He makes her stay behind with her maid Rouge to keep her safe, then he bolts right into the packed building. He pushes through the massive crowd and finally spots his classroom way down at the end of the hallway. He's pushing through the massive crowd when he accidentally slams right into a young maid and says sorry real fast. The maid insists it was all her fault, checks to make sure everyone is okay, and then rushes back to her mistress. Cyril heads back to Sophia and Rausch, but then he spots that same guy he bumped into earlier talking to Alicia, who's getting cheered on because she finally convinced her parents to let her go to school. Alicia flashed a determined smile and told them there was no way she was giving up on this. Cyril tells Sophia they're in the same room for the test, but she immediately gets suspicious and grills him about that girl he was staring at earlier. Cyril panics and tries to act like the maid is no big deal, but Sophia clenches her fists because she's not buying his story at all. Cyril keeps a close eye on her, worried he pushed her too hard since she's definitely not used to being out in public like this. He tells her not to worry because he'll always be there to protect her, and she asks if he's really gonna stay by her side forever. Cyril grabs her hand and swears he'll always keep her safe, just like he promised back when they were kids. Sophia grips his hand tight and looks at him with total trust, swearing she'll never forget the promise he made. Feeling way more confident, Sophia flashes him a sweet smile and says it's time to head inside for the big exam. They walk into the classroom and it's a total madhouse, with nobles and commoners all mixed together and freaking out over the confusing new rules. Sophia and her maid Rush are totally caught off guard, and Rush points out that you almost never see people from different social classes mixing like this. He notices the academy is dead serious about no one showing off their status, starting right at the entrance exam. He realizes that even with rules, you still have to choose between being an equal or acting like a boss, right as the other students finally spot Sophia. Everyone's buzzing with nerves and hype to be around Lady Sophia, and Cyril can tell she's already won their respect just as the exam is about to kick off. Blushing hard with a sweet smile, Sophia finally admits to Cyril that her ultimate dream has always been to stay at the academy with him forever. Cyril is totally blown away by her emotional confession, and he accidentally crushes the paper in his hand while staring at her in total shock. He tries to play it cool by joking that they have a big exam to focus on, but she just gives him a super mischievous grin. But their chat gets cut short when another student spots Sophia and realizes she's actually the daughter of Marquis Rosenberg. The kid gets right in their faces, demanding to know who they are and shouting that he won't stand for their disrespect. Cyril tries to jump in, but Sophia stops him and reminds him that he hasn't actually broken any school rules. She gives Cyril a quick wink and explains that to be equals, the person in charge has to give the green light, leaving her maid Rauch totally blown away by how smart they're being. Sophia turns to the boy while coolly asks who he is and what he wants, and he boldly introduces himself as Raymond. Out of nowhere, Raymond drops a total bombshell and says he's going to be her personal butler starting right this second. Sophia gives her butler Cyril a quick look before telling Raymond that a big decision like this is totally out of her hands. Raymond quickly clears the air, saying he only wants to be her personal butler while they're at the academy. Cyril tells a curious Sophia that the servant students actually have to wait on the nobles as part of their schoolwork. Raymond acts all confident and says he totally gets her, then he suddenly throws down a massive challenge. Sophia shuts him down hard, telling him straight up that Cyril is the only butler she'll ever need. Raymond recognizes the name from rumors about a kid who became a pro butler at age 6, and Sophia proudly brags that he's her absolute best. He laughs at the idea of a soft kid like Cyril being better than him, and swears he'll prove he's the real deal during the entrance exam. He makes a deal. If he proves he's better than her, she has to hire him as her new personal butler. Sophia stays totally chill and accepts the bet, saying she'll hire him as her butler if he's actually better, and he just gives her a massive, confident smirk. Raymond shoots Cyril a cocky smirk, basically daring him as they sit down for the big test. He brushes past Cyril and talks big, saying this exam is going to prove he's the only one worthy of being her personal butler. Roach whispers that she's totally stressed about the promise, but Cyril tells her to listen really closely to the specific words his lady used. Cyril tells the maid that Sophia's promise was a total trick, since it was based on her own opinion instead of just test scores, meaning he was never actually going to be replaced. Sophia pouts and admits that listening to Raymond belittles Sorel has totally ruined her mood. Cyril totally agreed it was annoying how Raymond doubted her taste in people, so Sophia told him it's officially time to prove that guy wrong. Sophia flashes a confident smile and tells Cyril to show Raymond and the whole school that he's the best butler ever, and he just grins back, totally ready for the challenge. The maids are totally stunned by Sophia's order, realizing Cyril has to get an insane score on the entrance exam to prove to the whole school that he's the real deal. Sophia asks if he can really pull it off, but Cyril tells her it's a piece of cake since his memories from a past life's magic school make the written exam a total breeze. Cyril explains that the top scorer becomes the new student rep, and if he goes all out, he might just snatch that title right from her. Sophia flashes a charming grin and tells him she doesn't want a pity job, so he better not hold back. The announcer yells that the exam starts in 10 minutes, and as Sophia tells Cyril to hurry up, she looks totally locked in and ready to go. Cyril realizes that even though he wants his lady to win, she actually wants him to go all out, so he tells his backup to wait for them outside. They sit down for the written test, and Cyril realizes that holding back to let Sophia win would totally go against what she actually wants. Cyril flashes a confident grin as the exam kicks off, grabbing his pen to show her he's ready to crush this challenge. When the violin exam starts, Sophia steps up as number 16 and shoots Cyril a super competitive look right before she begins. She makes playing the violin look like a total breeze, and her calm face shows she's a complete master of the instrument. She nails the final move with a stylish finish and gives the judges a polite thank you. The examiners start cheering like crazy, and Cyril sprints over to mess up her hair and say congrats. She winks and tells him to chill during the exam, but he insists he's her loyal butler, and he's sticking by her side no matter what. When they call number 17, Cyril borrows a violin from another student, totally sure his perfect written test score will save him if he messes this part up. Cyril introduces himself to the judges and steps up, knowing this violin test is going to be his toughest challenge yet. He starts playing his heart out right in front of those super serious judges. He knows he's got the technique down, but deep down, he admits he has zero natural talent for music. He's totally flopping compared to Sophia, making these awful screeching sounds that have the judges cringing in pain. Out of nowhere, a violin string snaps with a loud twang, catching everyone in the room totally off guard. The examiner jumps up in a total panic and screams that the string just snapped. Cyril stays totally chill even though his E string snaps right at the most intense part of the song. He thinks fast and switches to the A string to keep the song going, leaving the judges looking totally confused. The judges start clapping like crazy, totally blown away by his skills and the fact that he didn't crack under all that pressure. Sophia pouts and teases him for cheating on the violin exam since she thought she'd finally won, but he just shrugs it off as total luck. Once the dance exam wraps up, Sophia gets tons of praise for her awesome performance with her senior partner. She says thanks but gives all the props to her partner for totally crushing it on the dance floor. Cyril notices the seniors are all perfectly in sync, and Sophia's partner is such a great match that they make the whole dance look totally effortless. Sophia's pretty hyped that her partner is similar to him, but then she starts teasing that she's actually going to beat his total score at this rate. When it's finally his turn, he sees his partner is a pale girl named Fall, who looks totally freaked out. He introduces himself like a total gentleman, and she's super shy as she says hi back. They both start busting a move together. Cyril takes the lead, spinning her around with some seriously smooth and fancy moves. He's totally shocked by how she matches his every move and realizes she's actually a pro dancer on the same level as Sophia herself. He's totally confused by her insane skills since she wasn't even in the original game, and she just teases him for spacing out. She gives him a super sweet smile as her cheeks start turning totally red. All points out that even though Sophia is amazing, Soral is actually a beast too, and when she asks if he taught her those dance moves, he just asks why she'd even think that. She tells him she feels like they're exactly the same, and that totally blows Cyril's mind. Fall flashes a confident smirk and suddenly takes charge of the dance, dragging him into a wild new routine that leaves him totally speechless. The judges are totally stunned as they watch the lead of the dance flip in a way that's never happened before. Cyril starts to freak out, knowing he has to fix his moves before the judges spot his mistake. But he changes his mind the second he sees the hopeful look on Sophia's face. Fall is totally shocked that he's finally stopped fighting her and is just letting her lead the way. She warns him that he's going to lose points if he doesn't step up and lead. But he tells her he's got a completely different idea of what a real leader looks like. He asks for her plan, and she's totally caught off guard. He knows that to save her from a dark future, he can't just force her to follow his lead. He's got to be ready to stick by her side even if the path she takes is absolutely brutal. He decides his real job is to make her the star, so he tells Fall that if she's taking the lead, he's following her all the way. He asks her to let him help her shine even brighter, even if he has to break the laws of logic to do it. Everyone stares at him in total shock and apologizes for testing him, telling him he's officially back in charge. She spins away with total grace, and Cyril's all in, telling her, "Your wish is my command," as he gets ready to take the lead again. His eyes go wide as he tries to wrap his head around the insane exchange that just went down. Ball starts pulling off moves so insane and high level that they're way beyond anything he ever thought he could do. Sorel quickly tells the worried examiners that the girl just fainted, and he's only catching her so she doesn't hit the ground. The examiner is totally stressed, but Cyril promises the girl is fine and tells them to just go grab her maid or butler. A maid rushes over to Lady Pamela, calling out her name and trying to get her to wake up. The maid introduces herself and rushes her lady to the infirmary after Cyril notices Pamela is still breathing and awake despite looking like a ghost, and she thanks him a ton while promising to pay him back later. Sorella says sorry for crashing the exam and asks the proctor to give everyone else a second shot. The examiner actually lets them try again, but Cyril shocks him by quitting because he ditched his partner right in the middle of their dance. The examiner stares at Cyril, totally shocked but also super impressed by how much the guy actually steps up. The examiner agrees to the deal but only docks his points as a penalty, while Fall says she's super sorry for all the trouble she caused. Fallen tells him he wasn't being rude at all, and says she's actually super bummed they couldn't finish their dance. Fall gives him one last wink and wishes him luck on the test before heading out, leaving Cyril standing all alone in the hallway. Sophia walks up to Cyril, and he immediately starts apologizing for not giving it his all like he promised. She asks if he thinks he's about to get yelled at, then she gently tells him to lift his head up. Sophia pulls a cute pout to show him she's totally disappointed. She smirks and calls him out, saying he totally used that distraction as an excuse to tank his own score on purpose. Carol tries to play dumb, but it's super obvious she's already figured out his whole plan. A few days later, Sophia suggests they go check the exam results, even though it usually takes weeks for the scores to actually drop. They sprint over to the results board where a massive crowd is already waiting, and one guy is bragging that he saw the examiners and knows exactly why the scores are out so fast. She isn't even surprised by the massive crowd, and once they push to the front, they see that Sophia totally nailed every single practical exam with a perfect score. Sophia points out his grade, but he's too busy staring at hers until she forces him to look at his own total disaster of a score. Cyril is completely floored to see a measly 51 on the board, and he realizes the examiner actually kept his promise to tank his score. Cyril is totally shocked because without that penalty, he would have hit a massive 102 and completely crushed Sophia's perfect score, so he quickly apologizes for ruining her record with his own bad grade. Raymond spots Sophia and shouts her name. He marches right up to Sophia with his exam scores in hand, ready to prove he's got what it takes to be her butler. Cyril politely steps in and grabs the letter, making sure it's safe before he lets Sophia touch it. Sophia is totally blown away by Raymond's insane high scores. Cyril knows his scores are usually enough to land him in first place, and while he admits Raymond is actually talented enough to be a butler, he's definitely not letting him take his spot. Sophia is hyped that Raymond got a perfect score on every single practical exam, but he just brushes it off and says he's still not even close to her level. Cyril says his dance score is only 51, and Raymond just loses it, laughing in his face for even trying to be Sophia's butler with such a pathetic grade. The other students saw what really happened and tried to explain his low score, but Raymond just shuts them down and refuses their help. Cyril stays chill and admits that Raymond is the obvious winner when it comes to the dance scores. Raymond is totally shocked by how nice Cyril is being, but Cyril just smiles and makes it clear he's never giving up his job as Sophia's personal butler. Raymond gets a look of pure fire in his eyes and swears he's taking Cyril's spot within a single year. A few weeks later, their official acceptance letters finally show up, and Sophia teases Cyril while he's still sulking over that 49-point deduction. Fia checks her results and sees she absolutely crushed every subject, taking the #1 spot and missing a perfect score by just one tiny point. Sophia's just chilling in her room while a maid gives her hair a gentle brush. Cyril and Sophia are riding in a carriage, heading straight to the tailor to get his new academy uniform fitted. Because the school treats everyone the same, Sophia has to visit a regular shop for her project, and when Sarah helps her out of the carriage, she just keeps holding his hand while they walk. He gets all awkward and stammers that she's still holding his hand. Sophia turns bright red and asks if something's wrong, but Cyril reminds her that just because he's her butler doesn't mean he's her date. A massive fight breaks out in the shop when some rich noble starts screaming at the owner because his son's uniform isn't ready for the big ceremony. While Cyril and Sophia watch from, the shop clerk gives them a warm welcome, and Cyril tells Sophia it's her turn to step up and try things out for herself. The rich brat loses his cool and yells at the worker the second he catches her looking at the new customers instead of him. He loses his cool and demands to know why they're getting uniforms when he was rejected. But the worker just calmly explains that Cyril and Sophia actually booked theirs in advance. Boy's butler tries to hold him back, but he snaps and starts yelling that he's the son of Count Reed. Sophia leans in and quietly tells Cyril he's got to make them stop. Sophia steps up with a confident smirk and tells the guy to knock it off, reminding him that he shouldn't just throw his power around for no reason. The guy is totally frozen and can't even speak because she looks so incredible and powerful. His assistant leans in and whispers that this girl is actually Sophia, the daughter of a super powerful marquis. The kid and his servant immediately drop into a bow, begging for forgiveness for being so rude, but Sophia just tells them to hold on. Cyril lets everyone know he's already snagged 2 uniforms for himself and 3 for his lady. Sophia steps up and gives the shocked boy one of her extra sets, telling him it's just a spare she doesn't even need for the ceremony. Cyril finally catches on that his family already had the uniform ready, and this whole crazy situation was just a secret test to see what kind of person he really is. Now the guy owes Sophia a massive favor, and it totally explains why his butler stayed so calm through all that drama. Sophia asks the shopkeeper if she can make the uniform herself, and Cyril starts wondering if she totally planned this whole thing just to make the guy owe her one. The staff leads Sophia off to the fitting room to get her measurements, and she gives Cyril a quick wave goodbye before heading in. Sophia is totally stunned in the fitting room when she runs into Alicia, the main heroine from the game. Alicia says sorry for not recognizing her sooner, explaining that she remembers seeing her dance at the princess's party while she was just stumbling around like a total klutz. Sophia tells her she looked totally awesome, but Alicia says the dance was only that epic because her partner was so amazing. Sophia's face gets all serious as she just says right, while a tailor asks Cyril to come check out the sleeves on the uniform they're working on. Cyril starts chatting with Taylor and finds out Alicia is a freshman too, so he's really hoping she and Sophia hit it off. Back in the carriage with their fresh uniforms, Sophia finally feels like a real student, and Cyril totally agrees. He knows he's got a massive job ahead of him to keep his ladies' lives on track and somehow fix things between her and the second prince. He tells himself that the only thing that really matters is making sure Sophia actually has a blast at the academy. Right as they're talking, Sophia catches him staring and asks why he's looking at her face like that. The carriage slams to a stop and Cyril instantly pulls Sophia into his arms to keep her safe. The driver yells out saying he's super sorry for what happened. They're saying a bunch of kids just jumped out of nowhere right in front of them. Cyril's face completely drops when he sees the word children, because he can tell something is seriously wrong. He tells Sophia to stay safe inside the carriage and steps out to see what's up, quickly spotting two shady guys watching them from afar. Cyril realizes the kids were just bait to lure him out of the carriage and leave him wide open for an ambush. Cyril walks up to the two terrified kids to check on them, but they're totally on guard and ask if he's an enemy, so he calmly tells them he's not, while they wonder if he's one of the people hunting them down. He realizes those sketchy guys aren't even looking for him and Sophia. They're actually hunting the two kids. He asks why they're being chased, and the boy breaks down, crying that his sister is in huge trouble. He drops the bombshell that their own parents actually sold his sister to a dark guild. Now they're hauling it out of there, and Cyril is totally floored to realize these guys are from the slums, a super dark part of this Otomi game world. He finally gets it. The Gaudi nobles are the light, while the dark guild and the slums are the total darkness that's always lurking. If this is a major event from the game, he has to be super careful because this dark guild is the exact reason he lost everything before. Sophia shouts from the carriage, asking if the kids are doing okay. The kid is begging Cyril for help, and Cyril finally realizes he can't just look the other way anymore. But he tells Sophia the choice to help is totally up to her, and when she looks confused, he explains that as a noble's daughter, she has to wake up and face the harsh reality of their world. He tells her that a leader has to sacrifice a few people to save the rest. And while saving these two kids is nice, it won't even make a dent in all the suffering across the country. He calls them out for being fake, saying it's crazy to risk everyone's lives for just two people just so they can feel like heroes. The boy begs them to save his sister, shouting that the nice lady has to be able to help them. The kid is literally begging them for help, and you can totally feel how desperate he is. Sophia gets a super serious look in her eyes and finally makes her choice, asking Cyril to back them up. She knows she's being a total hypocrite and way too full of herself. She can't just look the other way when she knows she's got the power to save them. She throws his own words right back at him, telling him that if she's the one who gets to decide, then she's choosing to help. Cyril is totally stunned by her new confidence, realizing she's not that same little girl who used to just follow his every move. He flashes a cocky grin, talks big, and agrees to do exactly what she says. He looks right at the kids and swears on his lady's name that he's gonna keep them safe. She finally cries out her brother's name and they share a massive hug. But Cyril knows that by helping them, he's basically robbing a terrifying dark guild, and he's gotta handle this mess. He decides he's gotta head straight into the slums to pay the dark guild's hideout a visit. A few hours later, two guys are talking about the crazy news that a high-ranking noble actually took two kids from the slums back to her place. This blonde guy with a cocky smirk says what she's doing is way too perfect to be real. His friend warns him it could be a total setup, but he just brushes it off like it's no big deal. The blonde kid snaps his pocket watch shut and says they need to find out her real plan, because if she's actually for the commoners, they have to recruit her before the elites snatch her up. He stares out the window, looking totally ready for whatever happens next. Just as we meet a new guy named Liber, one of the game's main targets, who smirks, and Cyril's standing right in the middle of the sketchy slums, totally sure a dark guild base is hiding nearby while the locals whisper and give him the major side-eye. A shady guy in a fedora warns Cyril that this is no place for a kid, and he better get out before things get ugly. Cyril steps up with total confidence, introducing himself as a butler from the famous Rosenberg house, who's here to talk about the situation with the two siblings. The guy laughs off the idea of making a deal with a kid, but Cyril stays totally chill and tells him if he wants to talk to the lady, he's gonna have to show up at the mansion. With a quick slice and a grin, Cyril tells the guy that since he's just a messenger, his boss needs to show up solo too. The guy finally gives in and leads Cyril to a building nearby, muttering about how he really is just a kid. Cyril comes face to face with the scary guildmaster, Nameless, who's chilling with a girl on his lap and already knows exactly why the young butler showed up. Cyril doesn't even flinch when the guildmaster starts acting way too nice out of nowhere. He realizes right away that the buff guy is just a fake, and the real Nameless is actually the dude standing silently right behind him. Cyril remembers from the game that Nameless was actually a noble who got framed and lost his title, turning him into a thief who totally despises the powerful people who ruined his life. He's totally sure that if he can just get Nameless to see his side, they can skip the drama and avoid a huge fight. This girl from the guild walks up to Cyril and starts teasing him, saying she'll totally look after him until he gets back home. Pearl turns her down and cuts right to the chase, asking if they'll give back the girl who ran away. He tells them he's not there to stop their trafficking business, but since his lady already promised to look after the girl, there's no way he's giving her back. He slams a pile of coins on the table to buy her freedom, knowing the guild basically owns her right now. He makes it clear he's not actually buying her, he's just politely asking them to hand over the rights to her. The guild members just laugh at his weak offer while one woman picks up the single gold coin he's trying to trade. Nameless knows exactly what Cyril is up to, but he's not taking the deal. The guildmaster drops a huge 30 gold coin offer, and Cyril and the woman next to him are totally losing it. Cyril doesn't even blink before saying yes, and the guildmaster slams the coins down to show him who's really in charge. While the money gets counted, Nameless whispers to Cyril, asking what they're actually going to do with those siblings. The body double explains that selling people is what keeps the slums running, so he's definitely not letting the siblings go for such a low price. Carol jumps in with a new plan to raise the siblings as loyal servants for the Rosenberg house, making sure they'll never even think about betraying his lady. The guildmaster says it's a deal, but just as Cyril is about to walk out, he stops him with one last question. He asks if Cyril is seriously going to save the kids while ditching the parents who still owe all that money. Cyril confidently explains that making them his loyal servants also means he's totally wiping out their parents' debts. He stares Nameless down and asks if he totally overestimated what he could actually do. The real Nameless is actually starting to respect Cyril, but the body double is staring him down with even more hate. The body double slams his hand on the table in a total rage, demanding to know how a random kid has the guts to talk to him like that. Just as the bald guy starts losing his cool, the real Nameless puts a hand on his shoulder and catches him completely off guard. The body double finally agrees to the deal, but you can tell by the look on his face that he's super salty about it. Cyril gives them a big smile and says thanks, telling them he's super hyped for them to be a legendary team from here on out. A mysterious voice laughs from the shadows, calling Cyril one gutsy little brat for being so bold. Once the kid leaves, the group starts talking about him, and while the lady thinks he's a total cutie, the body double in the hat is just glad he ignored her, since it proves he won't get distracted by a pretty face. The body double looks back on the deal and admits that even though things mostly went to plan, he totally freaked out when he heard a noble took the kids, but now he's just hyped. Nameless agrees but points out a massive detail they missed. Kids never forget their parents and can be won over with a little love, especially since the boy is already holding 30 gold coins. The real Nameless finally realizes that Cyril saw right through their trap from the very start, knowing that the parents were the secret key to the whole plan. The Dark Guild's plan was to use the parents' debt to force the kids into spying on the Rosenbergs. But the boy totally wrecked their scheme by paying off the debt with 30 gold coins, taking away their power and making a direct deal for himself. The body double laughs in Cyril's face, calling him a clueless brat, and bragging that they can just back out of the deal and end him whenever they feel like it. Nameless isn't buying it at all, because if the kid was just some normal brat, it'd be easy. But the look in his eyes proves he can see right through their act. He calls Cyril a straight-up monster in a kid's body, pointing out how he plans to raise those kids to be so loyal they'd never turn on the Rosenbergs, even if the guild threatened their own parents. The body double is totally stunned when the real Nameless confirms the truth, making him realize they don't even need to take the parents anymore. While the group is totally confused and the woman admits she's lost, the real Nameless reveals the killer's true goal. They have to make sure these parents survive to see their kids again, which completely flips the script on everyone who thought they were dealing with bad parents. Nameless pushes up his glasses with a smirk, telling Cyril he finally respects him for seeing the country's dark side, and it looks like they're going to be partners for a long, long time. Next, we catch a quick look at the busted-up rooftops in the poorest part of town. Suddenly, we're at the massive, fancy entrance of Lawnbell Royal Academy, where Cyril is all decked out in his new uniform and ready to crush the entrance ceremony. General puts his hand over his heart and locks in, knowing that even though it was a struggle to get here, his academy life is finally starting, and he's ready to give his all to protect his lady. He looks up the massive staircase at Sophia and tells her he's been waiting for her this whole time. Sophia blushes and shyly asks how she looks in her dress, so Cyril drops a total smooth-talker line, telling her she's so gorgeous that anyone who saw her would forget all about the legendary saint everyone's obsessed with. Sophia's face turns bright red as she keeps pushing him, making it clear she doesn't care about anyone else's thoughts. She only wants to hear Cyril's personal opinion. Cyril knows a big shot like her won't fall for cheap flattery, so he waits until no one's looking to tell her that her hair clip is actually a bit crooked. He steps in close and pulls her into a sweet hug, whispering that there's no way the girl he raised wouldn't be totally adorable. Sophia is totally blushing and can barely get Cyril's name out, but he just smirks and puts a finger to his lips, telling her it's their little secret. Sophia is glowing as she says yes right away, and Cyril asks if he can walk her back to her carriage. Cyril grabs her hand and they head off together, totally ready to start their brand new life at Lawnbell Royal Academy. The headmaster kicks off the ceremony, giving a huge welcome to the new students who actually survived those brutal entrance exams. The student rep reaches out to welcome Sophia onto the stage, giving her major props for all her hard work. The big entrance ceremony at Lawnbell Royal Academy is finally kicking off, and even though Cyril knows his school life is starting, he's got way too much on his plate to actually celebrate. The students are all buzzing with shock because the freshman rep is actually the Marquis's daughter instead of one of those snobby elitist kids. Cyril has to give it his all to keep his lady safe and stop her execution by playing both sides of the school war between the snobby nobles and the commoners fighting for equality. He remembers a game route where Sophia turned into a total elitist jerk because of the maid's bullying and ended up dead after her own side used her, so he knows staying neutral is His next big headache is being stuck in the prince's shoes since Sophia is supposed to fall for him. But he's totally relieved because the heroine won't even show up at school for another 3 years. He watches Sophia, the freshman rep, start her speech, feeling totally sure she'll nail it since she's a natural and he already helped her prep. Sophia flashes a huge smile and kicks off her speech by admitting she wasn't even supposed to be on stage, which leaves Cyril totally speechless. She starts spilling about her tragic childhood, claiming her parents hated her and the maids were total bullies, which leaves Cyril completely shocked and wondering what on earth she's talking about. She tells everyone that a special person changed her life and helped her see that her parents really did love her. Then she promises to work her heart out for the person who truly deserves this honor, making the Neural winces as she realizes her emotional speech was a total disaster that makes it look like she's actually declaring war on the commoners. The teacher sends everyone to their rooms, and as soon as Cyril steps into Class 1A of the servant course, he gets smacked right in the face with a paper fan. A guy gets chewed out for being a total hater, but then a girl apologizes and explains he's just salty because Cyril gets way better grades. The boy says he's Luke and the girl is Chloe. They're both in the servant course, and Cyril gives them a polite greeting back. Everyone grabs their seats and the teacher kicks off the class. You can tell these guys are the best because they're already locked in as the teacher starts explaining the 6 academy tracks, like the servant, general, and noble courses. He slams his book down with a loud bang, shouting that Class 1A is only for the top-tier elites who are already basically pro-servants. He calls them out, asking if they really think they're big shots just because they passed the junior exams. One student stands up to protest, but the teacher gets right in his face, yelling that his skills only look good because he's a kid and everyone is just going easy on his mistakes. The teacher puts him on blast for his mid-exam scores and dares him to explain why he's acting like such a big shot. The whole class is losing their minds because their scary teacher is actually Tristan, a total legend who aced every test and was the school's #1 student. Cyril is totally blown away because their teacher isn't just some legendary butler the royals tried to hire. He's actually one of the main guys you can date in the game. Tristan tells the confused student that he used to be exactly like them. He tells the class he used to be a cocky brat who thought he was the main character. But in the real world, he just kept failing and wasting his time. He promises to clean up any trouble they cause at the academy, and tells them to just go wild and take on every challenge they want. The student breaks down in tears because his teacher was so honest, and now the whole class sees him as a total legend. Tristan drops the news that a huge freshman welcome party is happening in a month, and Class 1A is the lucky group picked to run the whole thing. He dares them to show what they've really got since basically the whole academy is going to be at that party. The whole class starts cheering like crazy, totally hyped to take on the challenge. Cyril is getting super serious because he knows this is going to be tough, especially with all the academy's big-shot nobles watching. Tristan calls out Cyril's name, and as the young butler raises his hand, the teacher mentions how he heard Cyril totally crushed the exam, but the kid just plays it cool and acts like he has no clue. Tristan announces that since Cyril is the smartest kid in class, he's the one in charge of making the party a hit, but a massive crash suddenly cuts him off. Raymond is also in Class 1A, and he's totally fuming, demanding to know how Cyril is the #1 student when he's stuck in second place. He's totally losing it, shouting that Cyril only managed to get a 51 on the dance exam. The other students start whispering about how he's the top rank with such a trash score, while Tristan gives a sneaky grin and asks Cyril to explain himself. Cyril knows the truth would wreck his lady's reputation, so he dodges the question by claiming he isn't an examiner and has no clue how the grading works. Tristan actually buys it and tells him to prove his skills by setting up the party, which makes all the other students start freaking out. He asks who disagrees with his plan, and a massive wave of hands shoots up instantly. Tristan tells everyone that if you raise your hand, you're stuck with courtyard duty, while Cyril stays the #1 student. He tells the complaining students they'll get a total rush if they make the courtyard look even cooler than the main hall. The student who first picked a fight finally gets what Tristan is really up to and starts grinning like crazy. He swears he's going to expose Cyril's fake act, but another student jumps in to say they're all doing this together. While everyone's hanging out at break, the students are all trash-talking their awful top student, and Cyril knows he can't lose to the courtyard team, or it'll totally ruin his lady's reputation. He rounds up the rest of the students to find out what they're good at and what they want to do for the party. Luke asks Cyril if he wants the party to be a total success, and Cyril's like, duh, why are you even asking? Luke tells them that if they want to pull this off, they've got to use everyone's special skills. Chloe reminds everyone that Tristan pushed them to try new things, and Cyril totally agrees, promising he's got their backs if they mess up. Luke jokes about stealing Cyril's job, but he's totally down to be his assistant once Cyril actually offers him the spot. They shake hands to seal the deal, and Luke is super pumped to finally start working together. The other kids are cracking up at Cyril's wild methods while Chloe admits this is actually going to be a lot of fun. Everyone starts grabbing roles for the party, with one guy hyped to set up the machine and a girl stepping up to handle the music. Luke slings his arm around a shocked Cyril, teasing him about that super hard push and telling him to drop the formal talk because it's getting weird. He hands Cyril a quick breakdown of everyone's jobs and asks him to double-check the list. Cyril's always stuck around older people in this world, and he never gets a break from serving his lady, who's the only person his own age. He always thought this was just his job in this new world, but hanging out with his crew gives him a feeling of belonging he's never had before. So when Luke asks if their roles are a mistake, Cyril just smiles and says everything is totally fine. He heads down the sunlit hallway, realizing just how wild this whole experience is starting to feel. It's honestly such a nice break from the usual. Sophia's at her desk looking super focused while this light-haired kid with glasses stands right next to her. Luke barges into the classroom waving his lunch bag, totally hyped to spend their break planning the party with Cyril. Cyril says sorry and tells a shocked Luke and Chloe he's got other stuff to do, leaving the whole party in their hands. Luke wonders why he bolted so fast, but Chloe reminds him that as a personal butler, he's got to get back to serving his noble mistress. Cyril shows up at the noble's classroom, and Sophia reminds him she already told him he didn't have to come during his lunch break. He bows low and tells her that since he's her butler, of course he's going to worry about her. Sophia asks him to brew some tea, but as he gets to work, another student starts making comments about how young he is. He introduces himself as a first year in the servant class, and she's totally stoked to hear how loyal he is to his mistress. Sophia brags that he's not just super loyal, but he also makes the best tea she's ever tasted. All the other noble girls are super curious and start asking if they can try some of that tea too. Cyril starts questioning why they actually agreed to join this random last-minute tea party. He shakes off his worries and locks in on his job, brewing tea in the academy kitchen like the perfect butler. He locks in and uses his wind magic to swirl the tea leaves perfectly inside the kettle. He uses his magic to keep the cups warm and watches an hourglass to make sure the tea brews for the perfect amount of time. He brings the tea set back to the classroom, staying super close just in case someone tries to poison the guests. He pours the tea super carefully to make sure she gets the very best drop, then serves up a famous treat from the Rosenberg territory. She tells them to drink it plain without any milk or lemon, and Sophia takes a sip while proudly calling him her personal butler. One girl warns her lady to stay away from the tea, but she's already hooked on the smell, even though Ferris is being accused of spiking the drink. She's completely stunned by the insane flavor and smell, swearing it's the best tea she's ever tasted in her life. She asks if it's really just normal tea, and Sophia is totally cool with letting her check for herself. She gets super protective of her tea and shouts that every single drop belongs to her. The rest of the crew is totally blown away by the flavor, and they immediately apologize for ever doubting him. This girl with the long black hair used to talk trash about the Viscount's tea, but now she's totally blown away by how good it actually is. Cyril realizes that this world is way behind on tea compared to his past life, and his crazy high standards are making him stand out way too much. The whole class is wondering where he learned those crazy skills, so Sophia steps up and brags that he's been a beast since they were kids. The class is hyped that he's self-taught, so Sophia asks him to train their servants, and he totally catches on that she's making sure this secret technique stays super valuable. She tells them they're free to use these secrets at their own tea parties, but they better give Cyril all the credit for coming up with them. Cyril realizes Sophia is a total genius, because this move will make them both famous with the nobles and help her start her own powerful squad at the academy. He's totally floored by her genius plays and knows she's a total powerhouse, while two noble girls gossip about how everyone is already joining Sophia's squad without even noticing. Then Carol brings out a plate of loaded crepes, a dessert they've literally never seen in their lives. The girls and their whole crew are totally blown away by this crazy new dessert. Cyril says they should check with the boss about her favorite toppings, and while the girls are devouring their crepes, one asks Sophia if her maid can learn the tea recipe too. Sophia's totally down and announces that their servants are going to be the first ones to learn these new moves. Cyril sees that Sophia made a huge name for herself with just one tea party, and while he knows a massive squad is about to form around her, He's still suspicious about what she's actually up to. While they're walking down the hall after class, Sophia tells him she'll catch him later. Sarah blocks her path and demands to know what she's actually up to. She tells him the second prince is totally surrounded by people who side with the elitist faction. He rounded them up so fast and so openly that it's totally obvious he wants the rich elites to stay in charge. She tells him she knows he's building a faction for her and agrees they need to stay away from both sides. But since he isn't a noble, she'd have to distance herself from him too, and she'd absolutely hate doing that. Cyril is totally shocked by her cold-hearted logic and asks how she could even suggest something that mean. She says she's trying to avoid any drama with the prince because if she's ever ordered to get rid of him, her duty as a noble means she'll be forced to do it. She looks totally locked in and shouts that she'll take on the gods themselves just to change her destiny. She takes back what she said and promises she'll save him without having to fight the gods. Cyril lets her handle building her own group while he focuses on staying out of the drama between the two big. He figures the upcoming freshman party is the perfect chance to run into them without it feeling forced. The welcome party is finally kicking off, and everyone's gathering at the massive academy with their own secret plans. The big party day finally hits, and Cyril is stoked to see everything going perfectly, as he tells his classmates they totally crushed it. The students are totally shocked by how far they've come, and they all know they'd be nowhere without Cyril's genius advice and insane skills. Cyril swears he was just backing them up and thanks them for the hard work, but he warns everyone to stay locked in until the party is officially over. While the rest of the class heads off to get some sleep, Cyril stays behind to run his final checks. Luke walks up to ask where he's going, and Cyril says he's just doing one final check to see the situation with his own eyes. Luke asks if he can join the crew and says he's sorry for totally freaking out when the project first started. He admits he wasn't born to lead, but with Cyril's help, he's finally getting the hang of things, and thanks him for the shot. While walking through the kitchen, Luke asks Cyril how he got so insanely skilled at such a young age. Cyril says he's given his absolute all to be the perfect butler for his lady, but Luke thinks he's being way too stiff, so Cyril asks if he can flip the script and ask a question back. Cyril gets straight to the point and asks Luke if someone actually ordered him to dig into his past. Luke tries to play dumb, but Cyril stays dead serious. Luke smirks and asks when he finally caught on, and Cyril admits he was suspicious from the very start since Chloe already knew his name and pulled that super fake trip just to get his attention. Luke asks what he's gonna do now that the truth is out, and Cyril admits that even after watching him work for a whole month, he still has no clue what his real goal is. He says there's no way he'd get rid of someone so hardworking and skilled, especially since it's totally normal for people to be snooping around the Marquis family anyway. Luke is totally impressed by how mature he's acting, and reveals that his mentor is actually his master's teacher. But he's keeping the rest a secret for now. Carol gets all flustered when Luke says he's glad they're on the same team, but then he finds out Raymond has been working the courtyard crew like crazy. He catches wind that the courtyard crew is totally fed up with Raymond's power trip, so he tells Luke to go see what's up tomorrow. Luke's totally caught off guard, but Cyril explains that if things get out of hand, it's their job to clean up the mess. He tells Luke that the guys in the courtyard are still their classmates, and since he's the top student, he can't just look the other way when they mess up. Just as the party kicks off, a super worried Sophia rushes over to Cyril for help. She tells them a massive fight is breaking out in the courtyard, and even though they're trying to stop it, things are just spiraling out of control. Sophia's friend thinks the whole thing is a total disaster and offers to step in, and since Cyril knows Raymond will absolutely lose it over his trash dance score, he decides to let Luke handle the mess instead. Right in the middle of their chat, another student runs up to tell Cyril that Sophia is actually there to see him. Cyril is totally stuck between his duty and protecting his lady, but Chloe tells him she's got everything under control while he's away. He leaves her in charge of the hall and sprints to find his lady, meeting Sophia at the ballroom entrance and apologizing for making her do all the work. He asks if she needs something, and she's so nervous she starts messing with her hands. She asks if something's wrong with the dance floor, and he turns bright red when he realizes she's actually asking him to dance. He feels totally bad for her, but since he's a servant helping run the show, he knows he can't actually dance with her. Just as he's trying to figure out his next move, a voice suddenly cuts them off. This guy with light brown hair walks up and asks if she's really Lady Sophia. This guy introduces himself as Libert, the son of the big boss at the La Cour Merchants Association, and a major player in the Commoners faction. Libert asks Sophia for a dance, and Cyril instantly panics because if a high-class noble like her dances with a commoner, it basically tells the whole world she's officially picked their side. Right as he's trying to figure out how to fix this without making those elitists blow up, he suddenly hears a voice he knows all too well. Out of nowhere, the game's main girl Alicia shows up and asks Cyril for a dance. The whole crowd is freaking out because a noble girl just asked her butler to dance, and Cyril is totally stunned since she wasn't even supposed to enroll for another 3 years. He sees Sophia's face go cold and realizes she's just one step away from turning totally evil. He tries to stay chill by reminding himself he's the host and can't dance, but something suddenly snaps him out of it. Suddenly, the second Prince Alforth pops up with a huge grin and asks Sophia to dance. Libert is totally caught off guard when the prince suddenly shows up, and Alforth starts teasing him for being so clueless about the vibe. Cyril is completely blown away to see Libert and the prince standing together, especially since he knows they're the heart of the whole elitist faction. Alicia and Sophia are both totally stunned to run into each other again after their super quick meeting in the fitting room. Cyril knows this whole situation is a total disaster filled with rival groups and messy crushes, so as Sophia's butler, he's got to find a way to fix it all without anyone getting hurt. He's stuck right in the middle of a massive mess of drama, with the evil girl and all her rivals fighting for his attention. He locks in with a serious look, ready to face the chaos ahead because he knows he's the only one who can lead them through this mess. All the big players are finally at the academy, but with Alicia joining 3 years early, Prince Alforth already obsessed with Sophia, and Liberty making his move for the commoners, Cyril is stuck in a way bigger mess than he ever expected. This diagram shows the total mess of a situation where the Villainess and the leaders of both rival groups are all begging for a dance. The Academy's big war is just about to kick off, and Cyril is standing right in the center of all the heavy hitters. The princess is begging Sophia for a dance so hard that Cyril can't even believe what he's seeing. Cyril knows he can't just jump in front of the second prince to help his lady. He's totally sure Sophia can handle this and reminds her that he's right there by her side. Sophia gives a classy curtsy and tells the prince she's super honored, but she's busy chatting right now and will catch him later. Cyril is totally blown away by how she stands her ground while still being super chill to the prince. She plays it cool and promises to meet him later, giving the prince exactly the kind of answer he was dying to hear. Cyril knows the prince is totally buzzing after getting a response like that. The prince is totally thrown off by her answer and just blurts out, "Why the hell would you say that?" Zero realizes the prince is just trying to flex his power by messing with the rival group in front of everyone to show who's really in charge. He totally drops the idea once he sees the prince's goofy, love-struck face, realizing the guy is just a clueless kid who completely missed the point of her message. The prince's sidekick steps right up to the front. He gets all smug and asks if Sophia is seriously planning to blow off the prince's invitation. Sophia asks if he's really telling her to ditch her friends just to go hang out with the prince. The goon is totally speechless while the prince just stands there, shaking and looking super nervous. Sophia says sorry to Libert for the interruption, and Cyril realizes she's totally stuck and can't turn the prince down now. Libert's just grins and tells her it's totally fine. To make up for it, Sophia sends her own butler to go with him instead. Then Lackey speaks up and suggests they clear out the middle of the dance floor just for them. Cyril says sorry to Alicia for his lady's behavior and treats her like a total VIP, even though he's low-key panicking about how to handle all this freedom. Alicia gives up on the dance, but she asks if he'll at least just talk to her for a bit. Libert thinks her request is pretty funny and tells her he's totally down for it. Alicia flashes a huge grin and asks what the big deal is if he's just a commoner. Cyril realizes this is the exact same scene he saw in the game. This is the part where that noble who hates liberty finally starts getting interested in the heroine, Alicia. He suddenly realizes that if these two fall for each other, it leads straight to the ending where his lady gets framed and executed. He knows he has to get them back on track, but if he wrecks their relationship, it'll just make the split between the nobles and commoners even bigger. Right after her dance with the prince, Sophia says she's got to head back to Libert. One of the princess's servants drops to their knees and begs her to stay. The attendant asks her if she even realizes what he's actually asking for. Sophia is totally ticked off by the interruption, but she knows she'd be crossing a major line if she tried to call him out. Cyril is losing her mind because she can't remember the promise she made to a commoner, but she knows that ignoring their group would be a total disaster. He finally figures out that the whole problem comes down to how much they actually trust him. Libert totally gets what she's trying to do. He stays totally chill about the whole thing and reminds Cyril that he better keep his word. Then he just dips, telling everyone he's got other stuff to take care of. With the guy gone, Cyril is stuck alone with Alicia, who he totally forgot was even there. And when she asks why he joined the academy, he realizes he's messed up big time. She turns bright red and admits the only reason she joined this school was to see him again. Cyril is totally shook because he realizes that's the exact line she says to the prince in the game right before they get their happy ending. He tries to turn her down nicely, explaining that since he's just the butler, he's not really allowed to dance. Alicia's super bummed, but she's definitely not quitting yet. She says she gets it, but he's got to make her a promise in return. She admits she's a total klutz at dancing and asks him for lessons, saying it's literally his job as a butler to help a girl who doesn't know any better. He tries to say no again, but she just grabs his hand and shouts that it's a promise. He finally gives in and promises to teach her if the chance ever comes up. He leads a totally exhausted Sophia to a room to crash, and she stops to thank him for all his help. She lets out a tired sigh and finally takes the drink Rush is offering her. She takes a sip of her drink and asks Cyril how everything went down with Liberty. Cyril says he's sorry for being a total failure and explains that Libert now thinks she's looking down on commoners because of his mistake. Sophia tells him to skip the apology, saying she's super frustrated that he'd judge her like that after she put all her trust in him. Cyril jumps in to tell her she did nothing wrong and takes the blame for the whole mess. He says he's sorry for failing to talk sense into Libert, and for forcing her to dance when she didn't want to. Sophia flashes a scary smile and warns that if those commoners keep messing with him, she'll use the elites to absolutely wreck them. Shush is totally blown away, but Sophia explains this is the fastest way to end the war and keep Cyril all to herself. She asks if he's actually serious about following her, so he bows deep and swears he'll go wherever she goes. She flashes a sweet smile and says she was totally kidding, but now they need to get serious and plan their next move. She knows today's drama totally messed things up with Liberty, but now her own team is starting to doubt her too. She admits she was being way too naive and decides to tell her friends exactly what's going down. Yo, thanks Rooch. Tell Cyril she's all clear to get back to the venue. She knows Libert is the real problem right now, so she figures her best move is to try and get in touch with him again. She asks Rauch to deliver a letter for her, and Cyril promises to get it ready the second they step foot back in the mansion. Feeling totally fired up, Cyril swears they're gonna survive this mess and dodge that execution ending. Just as they're about to head out, Sophia stops him right in his tracks. She asks if he liked chatting with Alicia, and he gives a shaky laugh when he sees her smile is getting way creepier, even though he's actually having a total blast now. He's also freaking out about an ending where he's the only one who gets executed. Cyril's classmates swarm him thinking the second prince and Mr. Tristan were there to scout him, but he shuts them down fast, saying their talk was strictly private. He watches them leave, thinking it makes total sense for the prince to ditch those snobs, even if his friends are completely clueless about why. Cyril remembers from the game that the prince didn't care about the elitists at all, which is exactly how he managed to marry a lower-class noble like Alicia. He realizes the real problem is that everyone thinks the prince is a total snob, and that one mistake is making everything a huge mess. Watching from the sidelines, Raymond sees everyone finally questioning Sophia's snobby attitude. But the real disaster is Cyril meeting him right in the open since the commoners are definitely going to take it the wrong way. Cushman walks over to Cyril, who looks totally stressed, and asks if he finally got those nosy classmates off his back. Cyril is dying of embarrassment and tells Raymond to stop talking, but Raymond actually thanks him because Cyril accidentally made him look like a legend. Raymond says that since Cyril saved his reputation with the squad, he's totally down to return the favor and help him out. Raymond strikes a huge pose and says he'll only help if he becomes Cyril's personal butler, making Cyril realize this guy was just waiting for an excuse to say that the whole time. Raymond figures out that Cyril is trying to meet Liberty, the leader of the communist group and the son of the big boss running the La Cour Merchant Association. Israel is low-key panicking because Raymond saw him with the prince and is definitely going to think he's one of those snobby elitists now. He's blown away by how sharp 12-year-old Raymond is, but this new mess right after meeting the prince means he needs to clear the air immediately. As they sit together, Raymond figures out that Cyril wants to sneak off and meet Libert to prove he's actually on his side. Cyril asks how he knew, so Raymond explains that when he tried to get a job, Lady Sophia told him she'd never hire anyone who hated Cyril, since he's the person she trusts most in the entire world. Cyril is totally stunned when Raymond explains that Sophia trusting a commoner proves she isn't some stuck-up elitist, which is exactly why he wants a secret meeting with Libert too. Raymond tells Cyril to go to Libert's tea party to unite the commoners, but he warns that elitist spies are everywhere, and Cyril might end up looking like one of them. While Cyril's trying to figure out what to do, Raymond comes up with a genius plan. He can just go as a temporary butler for one of the nobles. Raymond reveals that the perfect person for the job is actually the same girl who asked Cyril to dance, and he thinks making a deal with her is a total game changer. Cyril tries to talk to Melissa, the Count's maid, but she totally shuts him down and tells him to get lost. He tries to explain why he's there, but Melissa totally shuts him down, saying her lady is way too busy to listen to a servant, leaving Cyril feeling completely rejected at the door. Out of nowhere, a girl speaks up from behind Melissa, asking the maid who she thinks she's talking to with all that attitude. The girl is actually Alicia, and she's so hyped to see Cyril that she asks if he came all this way just for her, while her maid Melissa stands there in total shock. He was just asking Melissa to pass on a message, and Alicia totally fell for it, inviting him to the terrace for tea to talk about whatever he wanted. While Celicia heads off to grab her gear, Melissa asks Soral why he's sticking up for her, but he just says she's got every right to be suspicious since things are so crazy right now. Alexa finally admits she owes him a favor, but makes it clear her lady comes first, right as Alicia comes back and starts hyping up Cyril's awesome hair accessory. Alicia is totally blushing from the compliment, but her maid Melissa shuts down the small talk and forces them to get straight to business. Alicia tells Melissa to grab some snacks, but the maid starts to argue until Alicia suddenly apologizes for being such a bad host. Cyril tells Alicia not to sweat it since servants never leave people alone anyway, but then he says he's dipping the second they're done, making her wonder why he's in such a huge rush. Melissa says she totally gets it, and Cyril agrees that her knowing is the key, while Alicia just stares at them wondering what kind of game they're playing. Melissa finally snaps and goes off on Cyril, demanding to know how he could let her lady down after she personally invited him to the dance, and she's sure he was planning to ruin things from the very beginning. Melissa covers her face and starts crying, feeling totally stuck between protecting her lady's heart and just doing her job. Alicia jumps right into their secret talk and demands to know why they're whispering like she's not even there. Cyril and Melissa quickly scrambled to say they were just checking if he needed a drink, which made Alicia notice how perfectly they were vibing together. Cyril switches gears and clears his throat, asking Alicia straight up if she really got an invite to Liberty's big tea party. Asya is totally shocked he knows, and Cyril admits he actually wanted to be her temporary butler, but since that's a no-go, Alicia snaps at Melissa for being such a jerk about his social status. Asia says sorry to a shocked Cyril, but he tells her it's fine since Melissa has every right to be mad, and he realizes she's the one he actually needs to win over. She says there's no way she's helping until he spills his real plan, and since Cyril knows she's right, he gets ready to drop a massive bombshell. Laurel looks at Alicia and Melissa and asks the big question. What is Lady Sophia actually trying to pull off? Alicia just laughs because she saw right through the act and says sorry for being so suspicious earlier. She explains that Melissa warned her the dance could look like she was joining the elites and betraying the commoners, which is exactly why her maid was so worried about the drama. Cyril explains his real goal is to reach out to Libert and prove that Lady Sophia isn't actually looking for a fight with him or his crew. He makes it super clear that Lady Sophia isn't on the side of those snobby elites, and she'd never look down on regular people. Alicia asks why he's spilling all these secrets, so Cyril looks her right in the eye and gives it to her straight. Cyril straight up tells Alicia he trusts her, making her blush like crazy as she wonders if she even deserves it. He says her kindness really shined in the game, and since he and Sophia both hate those elitist jerks, he's gotta talk to Libert to clear the air before things get weird. Alicia starts to wrap her head around what he said, but Melissa jumps in, totally not ready to just trust him yet. Alicia cuts right through the tension and asks Cyril straight up if he's just using her to help Lady Sophia. Cyril looks her straight in the eye and confirms her theory with a single confident yes. Melissa is about to blow a fuse, but Alicia stops her and says they already knew this would happen since Cyril was being super obvious about his plan. Melissa shouts that being honest doesn't make up for what he did, while Alicia turns to Cyril with a totally different deal. Alicia plays it smart and tells him that if he's gonna use her, she gets to use his goal too, and he's basically forced to agree. Alicia gives him a huge smile and drops her big request. She wants him to go to the tea party as her actual partner for the day, not just her butler. Sarah is totally speechless, completely blown away that he's actually confused about why he can't just be her butler. Alicia calls him out, saying if he could partner with Sophia, then he can definitely do it for her, and she backs him into a corner by asking if he's really ready to. Sophia is fuming over the news that Cyril is a delicious partner, while her servant is straight up panicking about having to tell her. Cyril is totally freaking out inside, remembering how Sophia lost her mind over a simple dance, and he's terrified of what she'll do next, even though he has zero reasons to turn down this insane offer. Melissa starts tearing up and tells Alicia that if she's really this serious, she won't stand in her way, even though it's totally breaking her heart to see her lady like this. Cyril thinks Melissa is totally failing at her job for letting her lady fall for someone outside her rank, but he agrees to the deal anyway, leaving Melissa freaking out about how she's going to explain this to her boss. Later, another maid named Rouch tells Cyril that her lady is already waiting for him right inside his room. Just as Cyril reaches his door, Roach suddenly slams him forward, sending him crashing into the room as he yells out in pain. Roach shoves a shocked Cyril right into the room, mutters a quick apology, and slams the door shut behind them. Cyril looks over to see Sophia looking absolutely livid with her arms crossed and a dark aura, leaving him totally clueless about what went wrong. He's sweating bullets standing right in front of Sophia, and her cold silence is honestly terrifying. Fia finally breaks the silence, sounding totally terrifying as she asks Cyril where he's been, while he's low-key panicking about how he tried to set up that meeting with Libert. Sophia stays scary calm as she reveals she knows he was only flirting with Alicia to get to Libert. and as dark energy sparks around her, Cyril completely loses it, wondering how she caught him. Cyril stares at Sophia as she glows with magic and pure rage, and he starts to panic because he knows something is seriously wrong. Sophia is absolutely fuming as she demands to know why Cyril won't even look her in the eye. The new chapter is called Tea Party, and it kicks off with Cyril facing down Sophia, who's looking totally dangerous and super mad right in the middle of his room. Cyril watches her and starts to get really worried, realizing she's way past just being mad. Something about her is straight up creepy and totally wrong. Sophia flies at him in a total rage, but Cyril desperately screams for her to chill out before she completely loses control. He suddenly grabs her shoulders, catching her off guard as he gets right in her face and tells her to just relax and look him in the eyes. Cyril holds her steady and asks Sophia if she even knows her magic is totally haywire and spiraling out of control. Sophia has no clue what mana even is, so Cyril tells her to just chill out and take some deep breaths to get her head back in the game. Cyril reminds her of the magic control he taught her, telling her she's got to dump all that extra energy out of her system, and she's totally down for it. Following his lead, Sophia takes a deep breath, letting all that extra glowing mana leak out of her as she finally chills out and lets her rage fade away. Sophia's finally back to her old self, but totally out of it, asking what just happened while Cyril lets out a huge sigh of relief that the danger is over. Cyril explains she's got a rare condition called mana overcharge, where her body makes way more magic than it can handle, causing those crazy outbursts. He says the condition isn't actually dangerous, but having too much mana makes her emotions go totally wild, so she just needs to burn off that extra energy to stay chill. He suddenly remembers from the game that this curse actually forces her to have a dark side, which is wild because he totally thought she was just naturally like that until now. Sophia gives a shy apology while Cyril explains she just gets way too emotional over him, but he settles her down with a total lie, telling her she's the only girl he'll ever have eyes for. Cyril gives her a serious reality check about being a high-ranking noble before kneeling down to give her the full scoop on everything that just went down. Back in his room, Cyril takes a knee and gets ready to spill everything to Sophia about those elitist jerks and all the crazy stuff he's been through lately. Sophia listens in, but first, she asks if he still remembers that promise they made way back when they were kids. Cyril stares at the roses in the vase with a super serious look, and swears he hasn't forgotten their promise for even one day. Sophia finally breathes a sigh of relief and squeezes her fist, feeling so much better knowing he's totally loyal and their secret is safe. Now that Sophia's totally chilled out, she gives him the green light, and Cyril starts spilling all the details. He drops a massive bombshell that the second prince probably doesn't even follow the elitist ideology, and Sophia is totally blown away. Once he wraps up the story, Sophia gets super annoyed that everyone thinks the prince is a snob just because he can't control his crew, while Cyril wonders why his teachers and servants aren't doing their jobs. Cyril explains that things are messy, because some mentors let the prince fail just to teach him a lesson, while others are low-key praying for his downfall. Shay switches the topic to Liberty's group, and after Cyril promises to reach out in a few days, she tells him to dig deep and find out everything. He mentions that Lady Alicia got invited to the Liberty Party, and when he offered to go as her butler, she totally shut him down and insisted he come as her date instead. Sophia is straight up fuming as she towers over a terrified Cyril, demanding to know how he could make a deal like that without even asking her. He tries to play it off by saying he did it all for her, making Sophia pout since she can't even argue with an excuse like that. He tries to apologize by offering her tea, but she says that's way too basic and demands her favorite shortcake instead, which totally gets her hyped. Sophia realizes she's busted and tries to act all tough again, shouting that snacks won't win her over, while Cyril knows he was just one step away from getting her to finally chill out. Cyril sees right through her fake act, so he just smirks and asks what he has to do to make it up to her. Sophia gets all sneaky and makes him promise to do one favor for her whenever she asks, and he's basically forced to say yes. Sarah gets a bad vibe from that sketchy promise, but Sophia just plays it cool and says she hasn't picked her favor yet. Even though he's not sure what's next, Cyril swears he'll make her wish come true no matter what, because he's her loyal servant, and that's just... A few days later at the big tea party, Cyril notices Alicia is wearing a super fancy dress that's way too much for a simple commoner hangout. Alicia's super nervous about her blue dress, but Cyril tells her she looks amazing, saying it looks just like the night sky and totally matches her hair. Alicia turns bright red from the compliment and looks totally like a fairy, which just makes her even more shy while her maid thanks Cyril for all his help. Alicia giggles and asks if she's being rude, but Cyril jokes that she's treating him more like a butler than a partner. Alicia's low-key jealous, telling Sophia she's super lucky he's the one serving her tea instead of just some random maid. Gerald teases her about going full butler mode, making Alicia totally freak out and insist he just stays her partner for the day. The maid starts cracking up at her reaction to the powder, and Cyril can't help but grin, thinking she looks totally adorable, pouting just like a main character. The good vibes are totally ruined when Libert shows up, glaring at them and asking why a Marquis Butler is even at his party. Alicia rushes to apologize to Libert, explaining she brought Cyril as her partner, while Cyril straight up says he's only there to scout the enemy. Libert says he totally remembers Cyril's promise to help, and besides, he doesn't even trust most of the people at this party. Libert greets them with a grin and tells them to have a blast, so Alicia leans over and reminds Cyril that he needs to get Libert alone. Cyril tells her everything is cool since he's sure his message landed, and it looks like he's right when Libert actually acts polite and tells her to have a good time. Libert flashes a smile, glad everyone's having a blast, while Cyril realizes he's officially finished his mission to sneak into the party and grab all the intel. Zero realizes they're officially on Libert's route, so he brings up Libert's insane tea-making skills to keep their secret talk going. He admits his own skills are pretty basic, but since Lady Sophia gave him the okay, he's offering to teach Libert her secret faction-only moves to seal a new alliance. Word gets the hint and uses it as an excuse to get Cyril alone, asking him to teach his butler that secret move. Carol asks Alicia if he can step out for a second, and once she says it's cool, he follows Liberty's butler to a private spot. While they walk, Libert asks Cyril if he's going to complain about the weak excuse they used to ditch the rest of the group. The butler reveals that Libre actually wanted a private talk with Lady Alicia, proving the whole tea lesson was just a fake excuse to get them alone. The butler introduces himself as Nicola, Liberty's right-hand man, and Cyril admits he had a hunch, but is only now 100% sure. Cyril recognizes Nicola from the game as the only person Libert actually trusted to be his right-hand man. Everyone's wondering why Nicola is pretending to be a butler since Libert doesn't usually do drama. But Nicola just hints that the answer is hidden in the group of people standing right there. Everything finally clicks for Cyril when he realizes that Libre leaving his guest with his top butler is actually a massive sign of trust. He's totally blown away realizing that Nicola and Libert knew the whole time that Lady Sophia trusted him completely. This news totally blows Cyril's mind because it makes everything he used to believe feel like a giant lie. Cyril finally realizes that Liberty was just faking her anger to trick anyone who might be watching. Nicola confirms Libert knew the score and was just playing it smart to help Sophia without making the elitists come after him. That huge public fight was actually a total act to trick the Elita spies, because if Libert had been nice, they would have figured out Sophia was secretly on the commoners' side. Cyril is totally blown away by this crazy trick, realizing Liberty is way more careful and strategic than he ever imagined. Nicola tells him he's only half right, leaving Cyril totally guessing about the rest of the truth. Cyril asks for the rest, but Nicola explains that Libert is seriously on edge because of all the past betrayals, and honestly, Cyril gets why. Nicola tells Cyril to cut Liberty some slack for being so paranoid, explaining that he once lost a sweet girl he loved to a noble who pretended to be his friend just to kill her. Cyril had to show the elitists they were on the same side without starting a fight, but Liberty's past trauma made the whole thing way harder. Nicola hands Cyril a secret letter, admitting it's dangerous but necessary for their plan, and warns him to guard it with his life if he wants to stay allies. Cyril asks if there's one last message for Liberty, and Nicola starts blushing like crazy, saying he saw him the other day, and that spring is finally coming. Nicola instantly realizes he messed up by linking spring to love, since those Rosenberg roses are the big symbol for Lady Sophia. Cyril's blown away by how sharp Nicola is, but Nicola thinks the prince is just a nice guy who can't keep his own crew in line. Now Cyril knows for sure that the prince isn't the problem. It's his wild goons who are totally out of control. Right as they finish their chat, Nicola stops Cyril from heading back to the party and tells him to hold on a second. Nicola starts acting all twitchy and stalling for time, making Cyril get a really bad vibe, who's starting to freak out that Libert might actually be planning to hurt Alicia. He's totally freaked out when Nicola nervously asks if it's true that Mr. Liberty is actually into Alicia. Nicola panics and swears it's not a crush. He just noticed that Libert hasn't had this much fun talking to someone in ages. He asks Cyril what he thinks about people from different classes falling in love, and Cyril suddenly remembers that the game actually had a happy ending where they could be free together. Cyril just smirks and says if they're both totally serious about their feelings, he's not going to get in their way. Nicola is super hyped with that answer, gives Cyril props for being so smart, and decides to let Libert and Alicia have some more alone time. Nicola points out that if Alicia and Libert end up together, Cyril won't get framed and executed, which is a win for him too, so he's totally down to help them out from now on. Nicholas blocked Cyril from walking out, reminding him they're partners for the day, and he has to stick to the deal they made. Once Cyril finally walks away, Nicholas sighs and mutters that the guy seriously knows how to be a total pain. Some mysterious guy in a fedora walks into the room and tells the dude by the window that he's brought a guest along. The guy by the window turns around to face the newcomer and just says his name is Cyril. Fedora guy points out that Cyril is the one hanging out with him instead of the guildmaster, but Cyril just roasts him by asking if there are any crying kids who need their parents. The guy just smirks because Cyril already figured out his real identity, so he doesn't even need his secret code anymore. He gets straight to the point and offers a job that's a perfect match for the Dark Guild, and now Cyril is totally hooked. In the new chapter called Growing the Faction, we finally see the Dark Guild leaders who hide in the shadows to dish out their own version of justice. Cyril knows his job is to crush those annoying goons, and the guy in the fedora just nods like it's a totally fair deal. It's been 2 weeks since the Liberty Party, and now it's Sophia's turn to throw a massive bash for her own growing squad. Check out this super fancy table where a bunch of young noble girls are sitting around and gossiping. Sophia's squad just hit 10 members after 5 new girls joined, and Cyril's eyes are totally locked on one of them. He spots Pamela, Count Ford's daughter, the girl he saved during the entrance exam, and she's still thanking him like crazy. Alicia's hyped to see their neutral group blowing up right between the commoners and the elitists, but then Cyril spots something else major going down. Suddenly, a girl named Cyril shows up at the general course classroom door, and the other students can't believe their eyes. She holds up her lunch with a huge smile and asks Cyril to eat with her, making the whole class start freaking out. The whole school is losing it because another noble just showed up to see Cyril right after the prince, but Cyril is totally over the attention and knows he has to turn them down because he's got work to do. Melissa the maid shows up to scold her for being so bold, but Alicia refuses to back down and insists on eating with Cyril, leaving the maid totally done with her stubborn attitude. Alicia is totally determined to share the lunch she made, but Cyril tries to turn her down nicely by promising to reschedule, thinking it's both cute and annoying that she's so bold. Once Alicia leaves, Cyril starts stressing over this new promise rule that wasn't even in the game, worried her constant visits will draw way too much heat and totally wreck the peace between the factions. Cyril heads back to Sophia with a new plan, but she's totally losing it because he wants to invite Alicia to their elite tea parties now that they know the prince is cool with. Sophia gives Cyril a major side-eye, accusing him of using logic just to get close to Alicia, but he swears he's only doing it for her own good. Alicia's loving her tea and is totally shocked Cyril was the one who made it, while Sophia just smirks and brags about how her butler is a total pro. Sophia is super touched seeing these two rivals actually vibing over tea, while Alicia blushes and admits she's low-key jealous that Cyril makes Sophia a fresh cup every single day. Cyril watches them with total dread, terrified that Sophia might say the wrong thing and blow everything up. Even with all those scary close calls, the pressure was totally non-stop. Cyril can't help but feel like Sophia finally scored herself a real friend. Later on, Cyril tracks down Melissa, who's totally shocked to see him, and he says he's sorry if that tea party invite caused her any drama. Melissa promises him that her lady being friends with Lady Sophia is a total win, and her family is actually super hyped about them being close. She admits she still has no clue why Malady is actually at the tea parties, letting out a frustrated groan as Cyril points out they're both stuck in a pretty rough spot. As Sarah walks away, he realizes he just got rejected after thinking they were on the same page, but he's making sure he stays far away from all this drama. A few days later, Cyril finds Sophia brushing her hair at the villa and drops some big news. The second prince just sent an invitation, and you just know this is going to cause a ton of... Sophia's totally shocked to hear from the second prince since she has zero good memories of him. But Cyril just rips the invite to shreds before she can even say a word. Rhea stares at the letter looking totally lost, her eyes locked in as she tries to figure it out. She finds out it's an invite to the royal castle's rose garden, and asks Cyril if it's any different from the one he looks after. Cyril explains that the castle garden is legendary because the kingdom used every resource they had to grow the rarest roses in the world. He brings up the legendary blue rose that only grows in the royal garden, and Sophia is instantly hooked. A rattle from the next room gets Sophia super hyped, and she suddenly grabs Cyril's arm with a ton of energy. Her eyes are literally glowing as she begs to leave right now, but Cyril stays chill and reminds her they can't just take off yet. Sophia realizes she messed up and sprints off to write a reply and pick a date, asking him to check her work later. Cyril smiles as he notices she's way more into the flowers than the prince, and since they're on a date, they finally have some total privacy without any guards or servants hanging around. He's also stoked that the prince's annoying sidekicks, Jill Cliff and Surges, won't be there to get in his way. Cyril knows this is his big chance, so he's going to use this meeting to finally break the prince free from the elitists' control. A month later, the principal is literally shaking as he apologizes to Sophia for making her wait. He stands right between Jill Cliff and Surges, making a big announcement that they're finally heading off to the Royal Rose Garden. Hyrule and Sophia just stare at each other in total frustration because their big plan is already falling apart. The guard tells Cyril that while it makes sense for the royals to have bodyguards, they aren't just gonna stand there. They're definitely gonna butt into their conversation. Sophia plays it nice and thanks the prince for the invite, but Cyril is already worried that those two followers are planning to do way more than just get in their way. Sophia says she was excited, dropping a huge hint that she's annoyed now. But the prince is totally clueless and just brags about how glad he is that he invited her. As they start walking, Cyril notices that all these noisy followers totally ruined Sophia's flower date, and she's clearly super bummed about it. The crew walks into this stunning rose garden, and it's so beautiful they actually forget how stressed they are for a second. Sophia is totally obsessed with how amazing the garden looks, and Cyril reminds her it's literally the #1 rose garden in the whole kingdom. The prince asks if she likes the place, and while Sophia says the garden is awesome, his followers remind her she's lucky to even be allowed inside. While they walk through the garden, the followers won't stop yapping, and Cyril is already planning how to ditch them so he can finally get some alone time with the prince. Prince starts geeking out over another rose, but Cyril shuts him down, saying they can't go any further and he needs some serious alone time. With the crowd gone, Cyril tells a nervous Sophia to hang tight for just a bit longer, while the prince leads her to a super rare rose that only grows in the castle. The prince proudly shows off the blue rose, the legendary symbol of the royal family, and it looks totally epic. Sophia's eyes are glued to the legendary blue rose, finally seeing the flower she's only heard about in stories until this very second. The prince shows off the gorgeous rose and asks what she thinks, totally trying to impress her. Sophia thinks the flower is gorgeous and thanks him for showing her something so rare that it only grows inside the castle walls. She says she's totally hyped to see it, but she's being super polite and picking her words carefully. The prince is totally flustered by her reaction, and when he tries to speak, his voice just trails off because he's getting so choked up. He's so hyped that he just offers her one of those super rare special roses without even thinking. The prince's offer sends a massive shock through the group, leaving Cyril and Sophia totally stunned while the followers start losing it with rage. With a huge crowd watching, Sophia happily takes the blue rose, but since that flower is the capital's special symbol, the prince is now in a total mess. Cyril realizes the prince had no clue he basically just proposed in public, and if Sophia rejects him now, he'll be completely humiliated in front of everyone. He knows Sophia is totally stuck and has to say yes, and since they're just servants, they don't have any right to step in. Cyril's big plan is for Sophia to marry the prince she loved in the game, but he clenches his fist because he knows she's just not feeling it right now. Sophia is totally panicking and can barely get a word out, having no clue how to react to this sudden public proposal. Cyril steps up and asks to speak for her, totally ready to handle this super tricky situation. He points out that stealing a blue rose from the castle is totally banned without the king's permission, and that puts the prince in some seriously deep trouble. Cyril isn't backing down, and even though he knows crossing the royals is a massive crime, he's ready to risk everything just to keep his lady safe. Totally caught off guard, the prince agrees to talk to the king first, and everyone finally takes a breather for the day. One of the followers named Jill Cliff totally snaps and starts yelling at Cyril for having the nerve to butt into a conversation between high-class nobles. The prince is totally stunned by his followers' sudden freakout, but Cyril stays chill and apologizes for crossing the line, even though Serge just brushes him off as some low-class butler. Jill Cliff points her finger and demands that Cyril get on his knees to prove he's actually sorry for what he did. Cyril is about to drop to his knees just to end the drama, but Sophia suddenly yells for him to stop right there. Sophia is absolutely freezing with rage as she steps in front of Cyril, telling him he doesn't have to bow to these clueless jerks. She goes off on her followers for constantly interrupting her time with the prince, asking how they even dare to talk to her about common sense. Serges tries to argue, but Sophia shuts him down with a command that shows exactly who's in charge. She points out that even a commoner like Cyril knew better than to talk back when someone important was chewing him out. Sophia waves them off like they're nothing and tells them to get lost, shouting that they don't have any right to judge her butler. Cyril is totally stunned watching Sophia take the lead and go into full protection mode. Jill Cliff absolutely loses his cool and lunges forward, screaming at her for acting like she's better than him. He screams for the nobody to get out of his way, his face twisting with rage as he gets ready to strike. Cyril jumps in to block the strike and tells Jill Cliff he's the one who needs to learn his place for daring to touch his lady. Now that Jill Cliff is out of the way, Cyril locks his sharp eyes on the last follower and starts scanning them. Sophia plants her foot right on the defeated Serges, looking totally satisfied as she finally puts that annoying noble in his place. She flashes Cyril a sweet smile and says sorry, but he just jokes that she's totally stealing his job. Sophia thanks the prince and asks to borrow his guards, and he's so nervous that he actually says yes. Sophia finally flexes her power and orders the guards to grab those two punks who were dumb enough to attack a high-ranking noble's daughter. The guards jump into action, dragging the nobles away while they keep screaming insults at everyone. Jill Cliff screams that his dad won't let this slide, but he's clearly just barking with no bite. Sophia warns Prince Alforth to watch his back, reminding him that even though they're just kids, the world sees him as a total snob. She reveals she's the boss of the group that thinks they're way better than regular people. He's not doing a single thing to stop them, so it looks like he's totally fine with what they're doing. The prince is totally stunned and starts arguing that he'd never just ignore someone's ideas just because they didn't agree with him. Cyril and Sophia share a look, realizing the prince actually meant well, but the people around him have been totally playing him. The prince explains his teacher told him he'd be hated for ignoring what people think, proving he was actually given some pretty trash advice. The prince's crew is totally losing their minds, and one guy shouts that the reports only said the teacher was fixing the prince's messed up attitude. Sophia had no idea things were this messed up, so she asked to take over, and the staff felt so bad for failing that they let her handle it right away. With the drama finally over, Sophia thanks the prince for the awesome roses and heads out. Sophia crashes onto her bed, totally dying of embarrassment because she acted like a complete mess in front of the prince. Sarah watches her and thinks her cool vibes are totally gone, but he knows Fia's stressing that she caused a mess for her dad and Cyril. But he tells her not to worry because if the prince won't put his own people in their place, she was totally right to step in. Cyril gives her a compliment, and she gets all shy, asking if he really means it while totally forgetting she was just raging. He says sorry for going too far and gives her props for standing her ground, because she showed him that doing the right thing isn't always about what people think. Sophia is totally moved and sits right up, so Cyril suggests they switch things up to make her smile again. He sets up a table with some tea and a slice of cake for her to dig into. He sets a single stunning rose on the table and says he's sorry if it's not her thing. Sophia is totally mesmerized by the rose, her family's own symbol, and she notices the thorns have been clipped off as she takes in its sweet scent. Cyril explains he just didn't want her to hate flowers, telling her that just like the thornless rose, she doesn't need to have thorns anymore. He tells her one last time that she did nothing wrong and says she looks the best when she's smiling, making her blush like crazy. Suddenly, Roy and Emma from the slums show up at the door, and Cyril recognizes them right away. Sophia catches up with the siblings, and Roy shyly thanks her for all the help, letting her know that both he and his sister are doing just fine. Emma gives Sophia a massive thank you for saving them back in the slums, and Sophia promises she's going to keep doing everything she can to help. Sophia smiles wide, totally ready to see them succeed, and Cyril points out that she's the reason they're even happy right now. He makes it clear that saving them was her own choice, not just some duty she had to do for the Marquise family. He lifts her chin and tells her straight up that her choices saved a ton of people, including him. Emma sneaks up and covers Cyril's eyes, telling him with a smile that she's one of the people he's saved too. Cyril looks Sophia right in the eyes and tells her straight up that she's his absolute pride and joy. Then he gives her hand a soft kiss, showing her just how much he truly respects and cares for her. Sophia is totally blushing and can only whisper his name while her heart goes crazy over his big confession. She gets super flustered and shuts her eyes tight, but right before anything happens, a panicked shout ruins the whole vibe. Just then, a maid bursts in to say a messenger is here for Sophia, who's still totally blushing from her awkward moment with Cyril. Sarah and Sophia are standing together when he drops the news. She's got to head to the royal castle right now. The king suddenly calls for them, sending Sophia into a total freakout as she begs Cyril for a plan while he just tells her to chill out. Cyril explains that since the messenger asked for a private meeting with the king, he definitely didn't go through all that trouble just to blame her for what happened with the prince. Cyril tries to play it cool, but deep down he knows a summons from the king is a massive deal, and he totally gets why she's freaking out. He grabs her hands and promises she'll be okay, saying it's totally crazy for the king to call a kid in for something so minor. Sophia looks at him with total gratitude, and Cyril swears right then that he'll protect her no matter what, even if it costs him his life. Sophia is totally moved by how loyal he is, but she refuses to let him throw his life away, so she hits up her dad to handle things herself. Sophia looks totally locked in as she tells a maid to take her back to her room to write her dad, while Cyril passes the message along. Now we see the prince and Sophia standing back to back, looking super proud and tough even though they're still just kids. Half a day later, a maid bursts in with Sir Glaive's reply, and Cyril stops to thank her for being so fast just as he's about to head out. Cyril reads the super blunt reply telling him to just fix it, and he realizes he's got to get Sir Glaive to step in as Sophia's guardian for this huge mess. The letter reveals Sir Glaive is totally stuck because of an old deal with Sophia, so he's basically leaving Cyril to face the king's massive temper all by himself. Sir Glave's letter says his daughter's wild actions made everyone think he's pulling the strings from the shadows, so he has to stay away to clear his name. The letter ends with a massive challenge, asking if Cyril can really stay by Sophia's side if he can't even handle a tiny problem like this. Bright and early at the castle, Cyril and Sophia are getting ready for their big face-to-face with the king. A guard tells them to hang back in this massive fancy room while they wait to be called in. The king's butler, Mr. Tristan, greets them and asks what brings them by for a visit. Mr. Tristan tells them he knows they're supposed to meet the king and waves for them to follow him. He stops Cyril and explains that as her butler, he can't go any further with Sophia, leaving her totally shocked. Sophia tries to argue that Cyril is her butler, but Mr. Tristan shuts her down, saying the king wants to talk to her one-on-one. Cyril and Sophia share a panicked look, feeling the pressure as they're finally pulled apart. Cyril starts reaching out to help her but gets nervous and pulls back, leaving Sophia to just shrug and say forget it. Sophia locks in and tells Cyril she's going to be okay, promising to end this whole mess herself. Cyril watches her with total pride, honestly stunned by how much she's leveled up since just yesterday. He realizes she's become so powerful that she can face her execution all by herself, which is a total 180 from the girl she used to be. Right as she's about to head out, Cyril stops her and hands over a lucky charm, promising it'll keep her safe. Cyril and Mr. Tristan are waiting in a separate room, and the silence between them is getting seriously intense. Tristan teases Cyril for actually looking nervous, but Cyril just shrugs it off, saying anyone would be stressed if the king himself called for their curse. Tristan straight up asks if Cyril is the secret mastermind, and that's all the proof Cyril needs to know he's being doubted. Cyril stays totally cool even though Mr. Tristan is suspicious of his top grades and his job as Sophia's tutor, but he just calmly denies that he's pulling any strings. Tristan points out the waiting room is busy, and Cyril nails it by guessing the prince is the one inside. The prince and his guard walk out of the room, and when Tristan asks what's wrong, the prince says he needs to talk to Cyril alone. The prince tries to explain, but Tristan shuts him down and reminds him to remember his place and follow the rules. Cyril jumps in and tells Tristan to let the prince speak, since he's actually curious to hear what's on his mind. While they're grabbing tea, the prince asks Cyril how to handle Sophia's temper, and Cyril is shocked by how simple the answer really is. Cyril clears the air, explaining that Sophia wasn't actually mad at the prince. She was just totally fuming at the count's sons. The prince finally lets out a huge sigh of relief, and that's when Cyril asks if he can ask a question of his own. The prince asks why a random butler is even questioning him, but then he admits that after his tutor's lies, he has no idea who to trust anymore. Cyril realizes the prince is low-key putting his faith in him, and that's a massive deal considering their ranks. The prince is totally confused and asks Sophia why she's so mad at him. Cyril finally realizes he's just looking for a way to make things right with her. Cyril points out that you're supposed to apologize when you mess up, but the prince has clearly forgotten how that works. The prince knows he's still a total rookie, but he's definitely not an idiot, so he asks Cyril to give him the brutal truth on how to actually be a leader worth following. Tristan is totally stunned by how humble the prince is, but the prince says he's ready for the truth, no matter how much it hurts. Cyril decides to keep it real, explaining that Sophia isn't even mad. She's just super disappointed that the prince let his crew go totally wild. He brings up how he totally misjudged the prince as a stuck-up snob, and the prince admits he remembers that talk perfectly. Cyril explains he was being vague just to make the prince realize how everyone, even his own friends, is judging his every move. He calls out the massive gap between them, pointing out that one is a royal prince and the other is just a commoner, which totally changes how they have to act. The general reveals that the Academy's everyone is equal rule is a total lie, and since Princess Tacit is backing his followers, the message is loud and clear. It finally clicks for the prince, and he's totally shook realizing that Sophia is disappointed in him just because he didn't do anything. He hangs his head in total shame, asking what he needs to do to fix his mess and win her trust back. Cyril tells him to remember his place and start paying attention, and the prince actually stays humble and takes the hit without complaining. The prince asks if he can win Sophia back by changing, and since Cyril sees he's actually sorry, he asks if he can be totally real with him. Cyril thinks about it for a second and decides that telling the truth is the only way to protect both the prince and his lady. Then he drops a major truth bomb. Sophia never actually trusted the prince because he couldn't read the room and was being totally selfish without even realizing. Cyril's words really sink in, and the prince gives him a quiet thanks for being so real. Cyril tells the prince he can start earning that trust right this second. He tells the prince his mistakes aren't the end of the world, and if he works hard, he can totally win back Sophia's trust. Feeling a fresh wave of hope, the prince grips his fists and wonders if he can finally become the kind of guy Sophia would actually respect. Cyril flashes a smile and promises that if he actually tries his best, luck is totally going to be on his side. The prince looks up, and even with tears in his eyes, you can see he's totally locked in. Looking super hyped, the prince shouts that he's starting over and giving it everything he's got. Back at the palace, King Theodora and Queen Adele are talking things through, and they both agree their son is a total flake. So the king makes it clear he's not going to blame Sophia. The queen asks him straight up why he even decided to tag along for the meeting. The queen reveals she's been getting reports about some super shady stuff involving Viscount Earl's sons and Alforthus' tutor, who are all actually working with the elitists. She decides there's actually no reason to punish Sophia for what went down in the Rose Garden. The king sighs because things are way more complicated than they look, since his two sons have massive groups backing them in a huge fight for the throne. He spills the beans that Earl is backing the first prince and used his own sons as pawns to mess with the second prince, which totally worked after yesterday's drama. The queen's worried the plan failed since the boys got caught, but the king says it's all just a big act and they'll be free before you know it. He's betting that as soon as they're free, they'll run straight to their dad and pin the whole thing on the Marquis's daughter. The queen realizes that to keep Sophia safe, they have to act like they're totally cool with her putting Alforth in his place. This makes the Count URL blast Alforth, which finally kicks him out of the race for power. The king and queen share a heavy silence as they realize they're totally stuck in a massive mess of power games. The king says he doesn't care which son wins the crown, but he'll absolutely wreck anyone who ruins their future or shames the family name over a stupid power trip. The queen says she only stayed quiet to avoid looking like she was picking sides, but her time as a spectator is officially over. To save the kingdom and protect his family's name, the king has to see Sophia for himself and decide her fate. He's got to decide if she's actually worth teaming up with, even if it means making a massive enemy out of this Earl guy. The king starts thinking about a darker move, pinning the whole mess on Sophia and punishing her just to shut the other groups up. Sophia stands right in front of the king and queen, looking totally chill even though things are getting super intense. She introduces herself as Sophia, the daughter of Marcus Rosenberg, but King Theodore of Effenair just gives her a super cold, icy look. Queen Adele says sorry for the last-minute invite and tells Sophia to just chill because everything is totally fine. The queen hears everyone calling Sophia a saint, but she's convinced Prince Alforth is just helping her fake it because he's totally into her. She's sure Sophia is just a puppet and plans to find out who she really is during their meeting, letting out a sneaky little laugh at the thought. A guard pulls out a chair for Sophia, and she gives him a quick thanks before taking her seat. Sophia and the royals are sitting in this massive courtyard, and you can totally feel the awkward tension as their big meeting kicks off. This guard is just standing there looking totally lost while this super quiet meeting goes down. The king notices Sophia isn't falling for his just relax trap, and the queen totally agrees, telling her to just grab a seat. Sophia turns them down, saying she'd feel way too guilty sitting in front of royalty and begs for their forgiveness. The queen is picking apart Sophia's every word, totally shocked that a 12-year-old can handle such an intense mental battle. The king is seriously impressed and realizes the rumors were legit, so he decides it's way better to have her as an ally than an enemy, before finally revealing he called her there because of what went down at the Rose Garden. He's actually glad she handled it because it finally got rid of the fake friends who were tricking his son. Just like that, the king tells her he's not going to blame her for anything that happened in the garden. Sophia notices the king is super suspicious of Count Earl, knowing the guy is just waiting to use this whole mess to screw over the royal family. She offers the king a deal to back up her story if she forgets all about yesterday's drama, then hands a guard a letter to deliver the message. The guard insists on checking out the letter for himself before he finally hands it over to the king. The guard hands the letter over, and the king checks it out, looking totally curious. The king reads the letter and his eyes go wide as he gasps, "No way!" The guard asks if it's a lucky charm, but Cyril explains it's actually proof of the Viscount's crimes that will finally let the king rest easy. Sophia shows off the evidence that'll keep the king from punishing her, but Mr. Tristan is totally baffled about how she even got her hands on these secrets. Rewind to a few days ago at the Dark Guild, where Cyril tells his contact that his sources are top secret, and he isn't saying a word, even to him. The contact nails it and realizes he's talking about the second prince's goons, Jill Cliff and Sergius. The contact reveals these two are famous for wanting to wipe out the slum residents, so Cyril orders a massive investigation into them and their house. Cyril points out that even though these two really stand out, they weren't in the original game at all, so he's convinced they're hiding a massive secret. He remembers Nicola's warning about those goons, and how he chose to help them and give out his number, which is actually a massive deal right now. Cyril thinks Liberty's crew is also hunting for a way to take down these goons, probably because they're the ones who killed the girl Liberty loved. He realizes that even now, the big problem from the game still hasn't been fixed. He's starting to think Libert's fight against the elitists is actually linked to those two leaders from a faction that's going to be totally gone in 3 years. This mysterious caller just confirmed that the goons and their dad are definitely as dirty as we thought, and a guest's accidental slip-up just proved it for sure. The king stays dead silent as he looks over the report, seeing every single piece of proof for Viscount Earl's crimes laid out right in front of him. Sophia says handing over the proof is the least she can do, knowing there's no way this Earl is getting away with it this time. The king's plan was to make Sophia owe him big time, but she totally flipped the script and ended up doing him a massive favor instead. He's the big boss of the whole kingdom, and he gulps hard as the massive pressure of his crown finally starts to sink in. The king can't believe he's getting totally played by just some little girl, and it messes with his head big time. The queen is super hyped, calling Sophia a total genius for doing everything to help her son, just like the rumors said she would. The queen is totally geeking out over fate, talking about how Sophia danced with a secret Alforth at a party, and just ran into him again at the academy. The king stares at his wife in total shock, wondering if she's actually lost her mind for saying something so crazy. The queen is basically trying to force an engagement between Sophia and Alforth, but the king thinks it's just as stupid as his son's last big mistake. He knows he's got to stop her before she does something totally reckless, but honestly, he's low-key dying to see what happens. The king is actually super impressed by Sophia and wants her in the family, but he's clenching his fist, waiting to hear her answer first. The heavy silence finally snaps when Sophia speaks up, sounding like she's totally ready for whatever happens next. She says there's someone she's dying to walk next to, a person who's always looking out for her but stays way out in front, and she's doing everything she can. The queen suddenly realizes that Sophia isn't even talking about Alforth, but someone else entirely. Sophia flashes a confident smirk and declares she's going to be with him, even if she has to take on the gods themselves. The king and queen are totally speechless after she stands her ground and drops that massive love confession. The king takes her words as a total declaration of war, a promise that she's never changing her mind no matter what the gods or the royal family say. A guard tries to step in and calls her a traitor, but the king just raises his hand to shut him down. In a total plot twist, the king actually gives her his blessing, feeling sure the gods will look out for someone who's this loyal. Sophia bolts out of the room and runs right into a super worried Cyril, who's already shouting her name. She's totally shocked to see Prince Alforth waiting there, and Cyril definitely didn't see this coming. The prince quickly says sorry for barging in, explains he was just hanging out with Cyril, and then heads out. Cyril asks how the big meeting went, and Sophia promises everything is totally fine now, saying sorry for stressing him out. The prince whispers to himself that he was right all along. Cyril is the only person Sophia actually trusts. The guard is totally shocked that he's talking so casually to Miss Sophia, proving he's finally learned how to be humble. The prince bows low, apologizing for all the chaos, and promising to make it up to them for real later on. Sophia is totally shocked by his new vibe, and the moment he's gone, she asks Cyril what the heck happened to him. Cyril just smirks and says the prince is finally starting to think about what he's done. Back in the throne room, the king thinks about Sophia's crazy loyalty, and feels like it's a total waste she isn't marrying his son. The king says he wanted Sophia to join the family, and now he's dying to know who she's actually crushing on. The queen remembers that super mysterious guy, Mr. Butler, who was Sophia's date at Alforth's birthday party. She turns to Mr. Tristan and asks if he knows anything about this mystery guy. Tristan drops a massive bombshell that the guy is actually his nephew, which totally shocks the king because he thought Butler was just a nickname. The king was expecting some old fancy guy and is totally losing it, while the queen points out that picking a partner who isn't family is basically like choosing a fiancé. Tristan explains that his nephew is 12, just like the prince, and they're actually in the same class together. The king is totally blown away when he finds out this beast of a butler is the same age as his son, and it sends a massive shock through him. He's totally blown away and can only mutter "wow" as he tries to wrap his head around the crazy news. Now the king finally gets why Tristan hypes up his nephew so much, especially after remembering how he totally crushed the entrance exam and the welcome party. The queen reveals that Cyril is actually outperforming Sophia, and he would have had a perfect score if that dance drama didn't happen. But she's totally hung up on the fact Sophia's exam shows she totally bombed a super easy question that literally everyone else got right. The king is totally shocked when he realizes Sophia failed that question on purpose, and he's left wondering why she'd ever do something like that. Tristan explains that only one person can be the top student, and even if they both got perfect scores, Sophia wins just because she's a noble. He figures out she was just trying to help Cyril become the top student, but it turns out Cyril actually messed up the dance on purpose to lower his own grades, so Sophia would win instead, showing they were both secretly looking out for each other. The queen is totally fed up that her son is nowhere near Cyril's level, So she decides that if she can't get Sophia to marry him, she'll just make Cyril her son's husband instead. The king is absolutely losing it over his wife's crazy plan to adopt a butler, and he literally flinches just thinking about it. Tristan thinks this whole butler and lady duo is a total throwback to his own past, and he mentions how her eyes went full-on red during that rose garden incident. This makes the king wonder if she's also dealing with that same mana supercharge syndrome. The king wonders if this is all just fate, like some secret force is actually pulling the strings. Tristan tells him to stop being so negative, because he knows Cyril is way more talented than him, and is the only one who can actually save her. The king asks for proof, so Tristan reveals he's running a secret investigation, and the king is the first to know. He admits that even though Cyril is a better butler, this job takes a different. Tristan realizes that Sophia and Cyril are total wildcards who don't follow the rules of their world at all. Tristan is dying to know how Cyril aced the entrance exam, especially since he never had a real teacher, making his insane skills a total mystery. You'd expect a guy with his past to have trash grades, but Cyril is totally blowing everyone away. Tristan's sure there's only one explanation for this, because Cyril wasn't supposed to show up for 3 more years, but now he's here acting like a totally different guy. As they head away from the castle, Sophia asks what Cyril and the king talked about, and he admits that while they dodged a total disaster, they're still far from a happy ending. Cyril thinks that if the king actually liked her and forced an engagement, it would be just like that rose garden disaster all over again. Sophia asks what the plan is, and he tells her to relax because everything is going perfect. They're sticking side by side, totally in sync as they try to survive all the messy mind games and drama. Sophia gives him a cheeky wink and tells him her big plan is a total secret for now. He's totally stunned into silence, and that huge question just hangs over them as they keep walking. A few days after Sophia met the king, Tristan is busy grinding in his castle research room when someone suddenly knocks on the door. The king walks in to check on the research, but Tristan has to apologize because he's got absolutely nothing to show for it. The king groans that they can't run from fate, but Tristan says he's not to blame since he's clueless, even though the king knows he's the most clever guy in the whole land. Tristan reveals there's one person who can actually save them from this mess, and the king is totally shocked and hooked. The king is desperate to know if they can trust this guy, but Tristan admits he's not totally sure yet, so he's keeping the whole thing a secret. Tristan is totally thinking about Cyril, but he tells the king it's just a hunch, and they can't be 100% sure yet. He's starting to think Cyril is a reincarnator who already knows how the Light and Darkness story ends, and that info is a total game changer. He figures Cyril is trying to save the Villainess from being executed while building a massive harem by stealing the hearts of all the main girls, like Alicia. Even with all the danger and mystery, the king shouts that he's not quitting as long as there's a tiny bit of hope left. Tristan is totally locked in and tells the king to give him the mission, ready to risk everything to get the job done. The king asks for just one favor, and the camera zooms right in on Tristan's messy research desk. Tristan asks if there's any other choice, and after a super tense silence, the king says no, so Tristan finally gives in and agrees to the plan. A few days later at the academy, Cyril hears some wild news. The Allison siblings just quit school, and Prince Alforth and Lady Sophia haven't been seen in days. His classmates swarm him, hyped up and thinking he trashed those goons to help Lady Sophia and the prince, but he shuts that rumor down immediately. Cyril's little business is actually exposing his dad's crimes to ruin the whole family, and he thinks the timing of that rumor was absolutely perfect. While the rest of the class runs off, Cyril knows it's only a few days before the Count's crimes go public, and his 2 sons finally get what they deserve. He knows that once this goes down, those snobby elites are definitely gonna strike, and they might even take their anger out on his lady. He remembers a game route where those snobby factions got her killed, so he knows he has to make his own group way stronger ASAP. Right then, Tristan Sensei walks up to the group with some big news, explaining that the student council is desperate for members, and they want to recruit top-tier first-years like Cyril and Sophia. Cyril remembers the student council causing chaos in the game's faction wars under the second prince, so he's totally shocked to find out they're already running things in middle school. Tristan promises they'll totally vibe with the president, making Cyril wonder who's actually in charge of the student council. Tristan is being super sketchy, making Cyril wonder if he's actually dropping hints to get him to join the squad. Cyril needs to talk to his lady first, but he's actually pretty curious about the person leading such a mysterious student council. Sophia's totally shocked to hear the student council is looking for new members, especially since nobody in the noble class said a word about it. She says a teacher told her the student council is just one person, but since she hasn't seen any sign-up posters, she's wondering why they're even being invited. Cyril thinks something is totally off because his digging shows the student council president is super shady, making him wonder what Tristan Sensei is really up to. He turns to Sophia and asks if she's down to join the student council, even with all this crazy stuff going on. Sophia admits it's true and asks if he wants to know why, and he's totally down to hear her out. She gives him a cheeky wink and says her reason is a total secret, leaving Cyril stunned, but he decides to just roll with it. They're standing right in front of the fancy student council doors when Sophia asks who the only member is, and Cyril acts all mysterious, saying they've actually met this person before. Cyril swings the door open, and Sophia's eyes go wide when she realizes exactly who's waiting inside. The only girl there turns around, and Sophia's jaw drops when she sees those unique hair clips. It's Fall, the third-year student council president, who welcomes them by saying, Cyril realizes she's the upperclassman he was paired with during the dance part of the entrance exam. Her past is a total mystery, but he figures she's just a super talented commoner raised by a noble, which is pretty normal, so he's wondering why Tristan-sensei was being so secretive about it. Full tells them straight to their faces that she doesn't need their help, and they should just go home, leaving Cyril and Sophia totally speechless. Sophia snaps out of it and asks why they're refusing, especially since their teacher was the one who told them to join. Old coldly tells them that a girl who's caused nothing but drama, and a butler who can't even protect his master, have no business being in the student council. Cyril knows she's right, but he's sure there's a deeper reason why she's turning him down, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. He stays totally cool and asks Fall if he's really the type to judge someone over some dumb rumors and petty insults. She calls out Fall and demands a test to see if they're really as weak as the rumors say. Cyril's totally thrown off by how much Malady is pushing to join the student council, and wonders what she's really up to, especially since Fole was super chill with them during the entrance exam and is now acting like a total hater for no reason. Full stares at them looking totally torn, and it's obvious she's hiding a massive secret behind why she's saying no. Full Sophia straight up asks Sophia why she'd join the council with a mean senior like her around. But Sophia explains she's got a massive goal she has to reach. She's convinced that joining the student council is the absolute fastest way to reach her goal. She trusts her own eyes and can tell that Sophia is basically just like Cyril. Sophia keeps calling Cyril kind even though he's super mean, making everyone wonder what he's been teaching her, while Cyril starts to feel like he's actually the villain here. Cyril realizes Fall has her own reasons for starting drama, so he stops pushing and lets her know he totally gets it. Sophia accepts the challenge and says if they're really going this far, she's gonna give them a test to see if they're actually good enough to join. Cyril dreams up a totally insane challenge, like sprinting around the entire continent by tomorrow morning, and a crying Sophia tells him there's absolutely no way. Cyril just gives a confident smirk and says making the impossible happen is literally his job, and Sophia thanks him for always having her back. Cyril and Sophia are totally fired up and tell everyone they're down for the challenge and are definitely going to crush it. The new chapter, Student Council's Test, kicks off by showing us that those voices in the garden are actually two young apprentices practicing Makamba. One student swings his wooden sword with total focus, and the other guy lets out a fake scream as he gets taken down. The young maid is totally stunned, her jaw hitting the floor as she watches the whole scene go down. As the apprentice lies there totally wrecked, the guy who set up the training calmly announces that round 1 is officially over. The master grabs a wooden hammer and asks if his opponent is taking things too far, but the guy just fires back that he's not being serious enough. Right then, a young maid rushes up to Cyril Kuhn and tells him she's been looking for him everywhere. Roach the maid hands Cyril the investigation report he asked for, and tells Roy and Emma to keep grinding their training solo. Roach teases that she might sneak a peek at the top-secret files, but Cyril reveals they're actually loaded with fake info to bait any spies watching them. She swears she was just joking and would never actually peek, so Cyril just rolls his eyes and lets her off the hook. Gerald digs through the report on the student council president, Fall, looking for clues about her past and finds a secret that's totally insane. He's totally shocked to find out Fall isn't just some noble's daughter, but she's actually King Theodore's niece, making her a princess and Prince Alforth's cousin. So Tristan knew her secret identity the whole time and hid it, making him realize that Foal's rejecting their student council application was actually a huge deal. He realizes that in the game, Fall completely vanishes after 3 years, which can only mean one thing: a dark truth he's too scared to even think about. Roy is flexing his big win while Emma complains he played dirty, and Rauch can't help but mention that they both seem to like Cyril way more than her. Rauch asks if he's happy, and he admits he is, but he feels like a total fraud because he was the one who originally wanted to ditch them. Roach just laughs it off, telling him he's totally overthinking it because the kids only like him since he's a nice guy. She tells him she totally forgets he's just a kid because he's so mature, and that makes him turn bright red. The next day at Lawnbell Academy, the teacher finally lets everyone out and the school day wraps up. Just as everyone's heading out, A teacher shouts Cyril's name and stops him right in the middle of the hall. The teacher tells Cyril that the student council president just summoned him for a private one-on-one meeting. Daryl realizes the teacher is totally testing him to see what he knows about his secret identity, but he stays chill and just goes along with it. The teacher asks if he likes thorny flowers, which Cyril realizes is a secret code for Fall's bad attitude, or the royal family's blue rose symbol. Cyril just gives a mysterious answer, saying he doesn't care about anything else except for that one special rose from the Rosenberg house he's dedicated to raising. The teacher is left totally confused while Cyril just walks away with a little smirk on his face. Knox reaches the student council room, and a voice from inside tells him to come right in. He steps into the room and finds the Foals, but Foal herself has completely vanished. Cole is totally focused on her writing with her back turned as he walks into the room, and Sarah is right there too. She just watches her in total silence, feeling a soft breeze drift through the room. That's when it clicks. She's actually using wind magic. He sees she's pushing herself to make a soothing wind, which is super draining even for a tiny spell, and he's really wondering what her deal is. A maid clears her throat to get her attention, and Cyril thinks it's crazy that a royal like Fall is working so hard when she could just use a magic tool or make her maid fan her. Full is totally over the interruptions, so he turns around and asks Cyril if she's got a throat problem or what. She's totally shocked to see him and asks why he's there, but he just says he knocked and someone told him to come in. Full gets totally flustered and says sorry for spacing out, while Cyril explains he only showed up because he heard she was calling for him. Cyril offers to talk his lady out of joining the student council, but Fall totally shocks him by turning him down. Full is totally losing her cool and demands to know why he's saying no when it's for his master's sake. But Cyril just tells her he's already got a pretty. He warns her that something big is coming in the next 3 years, which is a total hint about her disappearing in the game. He makes it clear that Lady Sophia isn't some little kid who needs her hand held, and he's got zero right to stand in her way. He makes it totally clear that this was her choice, and if she's really going this far, he's not going to stand in her way. Full is absolutely fuming and demands he take the test anyway, but Cyril just gives a cocky grin and says his lady is ready to crush it too. Full gets a super serious look on her face and tells him it's finally time to reveal what's on the test. That night at the Rosenberg mansion, a maid tells Cyril that his lady is already waiting for him. He heads back to his room with a massive case of déjà vu, wondering where on earth Sophia could have gone. He walks in to find Sophia with a massive smirk on her face, asking if he was really alone with Full in the student council room, but her mood completely flips when he says they were just talking about the test. He's quick to promise it'll just be the two of them, which is exactly what she needed to hear to stop feeling so jealous. Cyril realizes she isn't actually mad. She's just using this as an excuse to get him all to herself, just like she did last time. Sophia swears she isn't confused, but Cyril starts messing with her, joking that girls are a total mystery and he's tired of being played. His words totally worked, and a super embarrassed Sophia looks away as her face turns bright red. He corners her and whispers a warning that if she ever pulls a stunt like that again, he's definitely gonna punish her. Sophia's jaw drops, her eyes wide with total shock and a feeling she can't even describe. Right when the tension is through the roof, Roosh walks in and Cyril tells her to get in there. His buddy tells him to get back on track and quit playing along with Melody's pranks. Sophia hides her face, totally dying of embarrassment. The maid demands to know what he did to her lady, but he just says nothing really, which only makes him look way more mysterious. Cyril is totally confused why Sophia is blushing instead of getting mad when he says the word punish. Sophia finally calms down and asks him what he was talking about in the student council room because she's dying to know the truth. Cyril admits he was sent to talk her out of joining the student council and asks what kind of test they put her through. He notices she wasn't even worried if he'd say yes to Fall, and he's really hoping it's because she finally trusts him. He tells her the test is all about helping Prince Alforth fix his reputation after that huge mess ruined his name. Sophia is totally shocked that the test is actually about Prince Alforth, and wonders if they should even be messing with royal business. But Cyril explains that Fall likely already cleared it with the palace and rejected his help on purpose just to hide her secret motives. He figures out that if they mess up, Fool gets blamed too, so she'll probably just find an excuse to fail them no matter how hard they try. Sophia doesn't let that get her down, and with a big grin, she asks if he really thinks they're gonna fail and have to quit. The maid sighs hearing these kids talk about such heavy stuff, but Sophia's already got a bunch of plans to pull it off, and she even wants to make Cyril more important than the actual princes. Sarah's down to take the test, but he's totally insisting that she gets all the credit and puts her name on it. Back at the palace, the queen finds out Alforth is totally shutting out his new tutor because he still doesn't trust any adults after what happened. The staff says there aren't any young tutors available, but the queen just gives a sneaky smirk because she's already got a plan. She tells them to make Alforth rely on Cyril, acting like it's some kind of big reward for him. This one move is finally gonna get him in tight with the royal family. Cyril headed straight for the prince's classroom, but a butler blocked his path and told him that even a Rosenberg needs an appointment to see royalty. Cyril says thanks and starts to leave, but another guy recognizes him and tells the butler, who starts freaking out and yelling for him to wait. The butler starts panicking and rushes to Cyril, apologizing like crazy for not recognizing him and promising to set up the meeting he just rejected. The butler and the other servant both bowed low at the same time, shaking with fear as they begged him to forgive them for being so incredibly rude. Cyril was stunned by their sudden 180, realizing his reputation did all the work for him as he officially stepped into his new role as their mentor. Inside, Prince Alforth apologizes for the surprise meeting. Cyril says it's all good, and then the prince asks him why he's actually there. Cyril was totally feeling the heat from the prince's presence, and even though he could barely act normal, he still managed to squeeze out a polite thank you. Cyril didn't waste any time and told them the student council sent him to fix the prince's ruined reputation and get him back on top. The prince already knew what was up and said the timing was perfect since they couldn't find a new teacher after the last one got fired. Plus his mom had specifically told him to count on Cyril. Cyril finally realized he only got this meeting because of his name, since Lady Sophia is such a big deal now that the royals are desperate to stay close, even telling the prince to treat Cyril like his own big brother. Cyril was super annoyed the royals were finally noticing him, but he saw a massive chance and officially stepped up as the prince's advisor to help fix his reputation. He was totally hyped by the news and told Cyril he was counting on him, while Cyril just gave a cool, confident nod. Cyril gets straight to work, kicking off their first lesson by asking the prince what he really thinks about all the political drama he's stuck in. The prince complained that everyone only sees him as the leader of the snobby elites, but Cyril shut him down by saying that's still exactly how people see him right now. The prince thought he could just tell everyone he wasn't with the snobby group, but Cyril shut him down and said it's way more complicated than that. Cyril dropped a truth bomb. If he said that, everyone would think he was either a coward betraying his friends to hide his mistakes, or just a weak puppet being controlled by someone else. The prince's eyes went wide with fear as he finally realized just how much trouble he was actually in. The prince knew he'd totally ruined everyone's trust, so Cyril gave him a choice: stay quiet or go big and tell the whole world. The prince looked totally defeated as he stared at the ground, while his attendant watched him with a super worried look on his face. The prince thinks it over and decides to come clean to everyone, ready to finally own up to what he did. Sarah wasn't so sure, but the prince stood his ground, explaining that since he was the leader, the elites did whatever they wanted, and he felt totally responsible for all the damage they did. The prince gave a sad smile and told Cyril he felt bad for making him come all this way, but he refused to let his people die just to save his own skin. Cyril was totally blown away by how noble the prince was, just like a main character in an Otome game. So he swore he'd never give up and would help him get his good. Once and his squad of butlers stood together under the trees, just taking a quiet second to think about everything. The academy looks massive against the sky, but inside those walls, everyone is busy plotting some seriously shady schemes. Back in the classroom, Cyril leaned in and told his friends that this next secret was massive and absolutely nobody could find out. The room exploded with whispers as the students realized Prince Alforth was just a puppet for the elites, and the two people actually behind it all were honestly just pathetic. Cyril kicks off his three-step plan by spreading a rumor about the prince's real side, and then coaching him on how to stand with total confidence. Cyril kept the posture lesson going, telling the prince to focus on every single movement down to his fingertips, but the prince looked totally awkward trying to keep up. Cyril cranked up the heat by forcing the prince through some painful stretching, explaining that he had to master the royal look so he wouldn't cause any drama for Lady Sophia once she joined their mission. The prince insisted he was fine, but Cyril called a quick break because he knew he'd have to push him way harder in the next round. The prince was blown away by Cyril's brains, but Cyril just played it down, saying he only learns what's useful, and that taking a breather is the only way to see the full picture. The prince was totally wiped out, but he forced himself back up, and Cyril silently gave him props for not giving up. The prince was totally fired up and begged Cyril to keep the lessons going, and Cyril just gave a respectful nod and said, "Of course, Your Highness." Before they headed home, Cyril made sure they were still hitting the training grounds every single day after school. Later, Cyril is just standing in the hallway when Tristan Sensei calls him out, looking super scary with his arms crossed. Tristan Sensei. Riley knew something big was going down and totally called out Cyril's fake chill, pointing out that it's super rare for a kid his age to land a job as a royal mentor. Cyril totally flipped the script, asking the teacher if he was really trying to call out the royal family since the queen herself told the prince to rely on him. Tristan Sensei got a kick out of Cyril's sharp tongue and got straight to the point, demanding to know how Sophia's butler suddenly became Prince Alforth's teacher. Tristan-sensei admitted he knew about the test all along, and couldn't believe Cyril would pick such a crazy, dangerous way to reach his goal. Cyril knew the test didn't actually matter for the princess title, but he was pretty sure Fall was going to mess it up all on his own. Cyril realized he had to switch gears and focus on winning over Fall, and he was honestly shocked that the super smart sensei hadn't figured out his plan yet. Tristan-sensei wasn't satisfied at all and kept grilling him, demanding to know the real goal behind these crazy moves because he knew Cyril was hiding something big. Cyril made it super clear that as Sophia's personal butler, everything he does, even training the prince, is just to make her happy. As Cyril walked off, Tristan-sensei watched him with a shady smirk, deciding to let things slide for now. After the rumors had a few days to spread everywhere, Sophia threw a tea party and gave Prince Alforth a super warm welcome the second he showed up. Sophia invited all her guests, even the prince himself, to come hang out at her cozy little tea party. She acted like the party was no big deal, just hoping Prince Alforth would have a total blast. Prince Alforth thanked Sophia for the invite, but he let her know that Cyril had already given him the scoop on the whole event. Cyril was stoked because he finally acted like a total pro instead of a clueless kid, which was a huge win for the princess's reputation while he sat there with a fresh waffle and... Two girls at the party were totally losing it over the snacks, saying they're still the best with that perfect crispy outside and soft middle. The prince asked if Cyril made the waffles himself, but Cyril just played it cool and said he taught a chef the secret recipe. The prince's eyes totally lit up when he realized he could crush these fire waffles whenever he wanted, as long as that chef was around to make them. The whole table went dead silent out of nowhere, and you could see one girl's hand shaking as she nervously gripped her fork. With a waffle halfway to his mouth, the prince froze solid, his eyes wide with pure panic as he realized he just totally messed up. Cyril leaned in and called out the prince, warning him that his words sounded like he was demanding the chef for himself, leaving all the other girls at the table absolutely stunned. One girl freaked out and asked Sophia if Cyril went too far calling out the prince, but Sophia just grinned and told her not to sweat it. The prince rushes to apologize to Sophia for his big mistake, but Cyril cuts him off and warns him that a royal shouldn't be saying sorry so easily. The prince is totally stuck, wondering if saying sorry will just backfire, while the girls whisper about all the rumors and wonder if he's actually trying to be a better person. Cyril smoothly steered the talk back to why the prince actually showed up, and he snapped right back to business. The prince got super serious and told everyone the real reason he showed up to the tea party was to ask them for a massive favor. He said he just realized everyone thinks he's the big boss of the elite group, and he's here to set the record straight. He kept swearing that he's never looked down on lower nobles or even regular people. Sophia stared him down and asked why he was hanging out with the elitist group if he was telling the truth, and he was totally speechless. The prince finally admitted he was a total fool for teaming up with the elitists, and they totally used him to get what they wanted. The prince bowed his head way down over the table and told everyone he was seriously sorry for all the trouble he caused. Sophia knew royals aren't supposed to apologize, but the prince actually bowing his head moved everyone way more than just words ever could. The prince gets all fired up and says he wants to unite the commoners and the royals, but he needs Sophia's crew to help him get started. Sophia instantly got the vibe. The prince wanted a way to talk to the commoners, and if her group helped him out, they'd score some serious power for themselves. Sophia looked at her grinning friends and asked if they were really all in on this new alliance. Sophia looked totally locked in as she stepped up to be the bridge, leaving the prince completely shocked and super relieved. The prince stumbled over his words thanking her since Sophia's group finally agreed to team him up with the commoners, and while this was a huge win, he knew the real battle was just beginning. The gang figures out their next big hurdle is a powerful commoner named Libert's son, and while Alicia wants to try talking to him, Cyril says they need to be way more direct and that she shouldn't get too involved. Alicia admitted she was totally hopeless at smooth talking and couldn't handle the deal by herself, so she knew she definitely needed some backup. Blushing hard but looking totally determined, she turned to Cyril and asked him to join her on this super important mission. Alicia pumps her fist and cheers for them to head out, but Cyril is already sweating buckets, complaining that it's always just the two of them, and feeling like things are about to get messy. While they're crossing the academy to recruit Libert, Alicia asks Cyril why he's trailing behind, and he just says that's where a loyal servant belongs. Alicia admits she has no clue where the commoner course classroom is, so she asks Cyril to lead the way, and he starts showing her exactly where to go. Melissa suddenly pops up and tells Cyril to fix the mess, but he's just totally annoyed because Alicia is ignoring the maid and walking right next to him, making him let out a huge sigh. Alicia's getting cold feet about this whole freedom thing, and even though Cyril knows it's super weird for a noble to crash the commoner course, he insists they're sticking to the plan. Alicia is hyped that even the prince trusts Cyril. but he just shrugs it off as luck, saying he's only there as her butler to help set up a massive ambush on Libert. Alicia finally puts the pieces together about the prince. Sophia asks him point-blank if he's into Cyril, and even though he doesn't say it out loud, Cyril can totally tell what his real intentions are. Alicia straight up asks Cyrilson if he loves Sophia back, and even though he's caught off guard, he proudly admits he's not hiding his feelings because he values her trust way too much. Alicia looks totally bummed as she admits she's super jealous of their bond, but Cyril just stares back with a completely blank face. Cyril locks in and keeps his eyes glued to everything going down in the hallway. Two students are walking down the hall, and one of them is already getting defensive, swearing he's not hiding a single thing. Cyril steps in and asks the students to grab Libertson, but one of them totally freaks out when he realizes a servant is standing right in front of him. The student's jaw drops as he finally connects the dots. If she's hanging out with a servant, she's definitely a high-class noble lady. The stunning Alicia Sama suddenly shows up and sends the commoner students into a total frenzy. But Liberate just walks over coolly and tells them they're being way too loud since he... Cyril says sorry for the scene but hands over an invitation to prove they're serious. And as Libert takes it, he admits he's shocked Cyril actually let her show up in person. Cyril spills the news that Sophia is throwing a tea party for her squad soon, and she personally asked for Libert to be there. Libre confirms Prince Alforth is coming too, which gets the students whispering about a secret commoner group and wondering if the prince is actually a spy for the snobby elites. Libert stares at the letter, wondering if this fancy noble tea party is actually just a massive trap meant to take down the commoner faction. Liber gets right in Cyril's face and asks if this is all just a trap, but Cyril stays totally chill and promises they aren't trying to mess with them. Libert shoots him a terrifying look and asks why he was even invited, since the second prince hates commoners, and he'd just end up ruining the whole mood. Right as things get super intense, Alicia steps up and shouts Cyril Sand's name to shut down the whole argument. Cyril claims it's all just a big misunderstanding and that Prince Alforth actually wants to be friends, which is why he asks Sophia to step in, but Libert is seriously doubting the prince ever said that. Cyril stares Libert right in the eyes and tells him straight up that the prince actually wants to be on his good side. Cyril realized Libert was a total genius for seeing right through him and asking the exact question needed to make his plan work. Cyril realizes he totally nailed it because now every commoner there knows Prince Alforth is asking Sophia to be the link to their side. Cyril looks back and remembers how they almost stayed neutral. But after that Rose Garden disaster, Melody is totally done with the elitists and is teaming up with the commoners, just like... Libert accepts the invite and asks how many people can come. And since Cyril says there's no limit as long as they know ahead of time, Libert realizes he can bring whoever he wants. Liberty smells a trap the second he's told he's responsible for his guests. But Cyril keeps it chill and says he's not looking for trouble, even though Liberty makes it clear he doesn't trust him one bit. Just as the boys are about to go at it, Alicia shouts for Liberty-san, her voice cutting right through the heavy vibe. Alicia pours her heart out, begging him to believe they just want to be friends. And Libert instantly gives her a super smooth reply saying he totally trusts her. Libert flashes a massive smile while saying thanks, and Cyril is left totally speechless by how fast his vibe just flipped. A few days later, the Rosenbergs host a tea party at the Academy Hall, and it's clear that everyone's loyalties have totally shifted. Both sides are finally facing off, with Sophia and her noble squad on one side, and Libert with his serious commoner crew on the other, all of them staring each other down and waiting for something to happen. Alicia looks totally stunning in her party dress and pearls, scanning the room with a sweet smile while a servant carries a tray of drinks through the crowd. Prince Alforth waves super hyped at Cyril, and Cyril tells him he looks totally awesome in that suit. Alforth explains he had this suit made just to vibe with the commoners, but he's low-key worried it's too plain until Cyril tells him it's spot on, letting them both finally relax. The prince tries to thank Cyril, but he totally brushes it off and says it was all his lady's idea, making the prince realize that Sophia is the one who actually deserves the credit. Alforth is low-key celebrating his big brain moment, but Cyril warns him to pipe down or he'll ruin the secret, so the prince hides his hype and admits he's right. Prince Alforth gets totally real and thanks Cyril for all his help, and you can tell it really hits Cyril right in the feels. Alforth heads off all happy to greet Sophia, while Cyril watches the party go perfectly as people from every class just hang out and chat without a single worry. The whole crowd starts buzzing with whispers as everyone stares, totally hooked on the drama going down. Finally, the three big shots, Sophia, Libert, and Prince Alforth, are all sitting at the same table, and this is the moment everything changes. Everything gets super awkward as Prince Alforth and Libert trade nervous side-eyes, neither one willing to break the silence first. Cyril sees them just standing there in total silence, and he knows he's got to step in before things get even more awkward. Melody finally shows why she's there by pointing at some crepes her butler Cyril whipped up, and she tells everyone they've gotta try them. Prince Alforth is hyped that Cyril actually made this. Libert just gives a chill "oh" after a bite, and Sophia is totally shocked by her butler's insane cooking skills. Sophia flexes that her butler is the absolute best, while Libert wonders if regular people would go crazy for these crepes. Lieber thinks it over and decides the crepe tastes perfect, but the ingredients are just way too expensive for it to ever become popular. He keeps thinking it over, knowing that even if it tastes fire, regular people aren't gonna buy it if it costs a fortune. Sophia is totally on board and calls for Cyril, who shows up with a paper showing exactly how much this is all gonna cost. Cyril explains he's got 2 plans ready. One for today's crepe serve, and a cheaper version on the right that regular people can actually afford. Liebert checks the plan and says the crepe will be a total hit with regular folks, and Cyril agrees, saying it'll blow up as long as they sell it right. Cyril realizes Sophia wants Liberty to handle the sales since he's a merchant, and then she drops a bombshell by saying she's giving the recipe to Prince Alforth. Everyone is totally stunned by the news, and Libert and Prince Alforth both freak out, asking if she's seriously giving the recipe to the prince. Sophia stays totally cool and admits she was super rude back at the Rose Garden, so she's doing this to apologize for that mess. Prince Alforth tries to play it cool and says it's fine, but Sophia insists she was out of line and hands over the recipe for free as a real apology. Alforth grips the recipe tight as he realizes the final choice is totally up to him, leaving him completely speechless. Libert shouts to the prince, who stops for a second before giving Cyril a firm nod and saying he's definitely taking that recipe. Prince Alforth faces the crowd and kicks things off with a huge apology, leaving the students completely lost. He starts by telling everyone he's done with the elites, admitting they totally used him and he messed things up big time for the regular people. The prince bows super low to apologize and explains his side, making Sophia and the crew beg him to stand up while Libert and his friend just watch in total shock. Alforth admits he'll get in massive trouble for bowing to a commoner, so this is a one-time deal just to show them how truly sorry he is. He looks Libert right in the eye and says the only way to fix the country is by working with the common people. Then he finally hands over the recipe. Libert's totally shocked and asks if the prince is actually letting him sell the crepe. But Alforth just hands over the whole recipe and tells him he can keep all the money and fame for himself. Libert tells the prince he's super honored by the crazy offer, but he's actually gonna have to turn it down. Prince Alforth is left wide-eyed and totally shook, unable to believe they actually turned him down. The confused prince asks why his apology isn't enough, so Libert explains that as a merchant, he only takes deals where everyone wins. And that rule applies here too. Cyril jumps in to tell the confused prince that Liberty said no because her recipe is way too valuable to just be a simple apology gift. The prince is totally confused by how these business guys think and wonders why they aren't just chasing the biggest payday. But then he realizes that just giving them the rights to sell the fabric is a huge win on its own. Libert snaps at Cyril to shut up, but Cyril keeps telling the prince that rivals will just copy the recipe, so Libert's is really just using the prince's power to keep his money safe. Cyril smirks and says he can't pass up a chance to teach a lesson as the counselor, leaving Libert to admit that Cyril being the princess's new mentor is making things a total headache for him. Hyrule schools the panicking prince on how to make a win-win deal, while calling him out for almost handing over the recipe rights for absolutely nothing. Cyril laughs about how he's being way nicer to the prince than he ever was to Sophia, and she just sarcastically tells him his job must be so tough. Sophia admits she actually wanted him to be way tougher on her, leaving Libert totally speechless as she rubs her chin in thought. The prince tries to give Sophia all the profits since she shared the recipe, but she says helping him is reward enough, and Lieberkheim won't take a cut either because the recipe is just way too valuable, a point Sophia actually agrees with. Libert stands his ground, refusing to get ripped off and demanding they split the cash, but the prince insists he's totally cool with just owning the rights. We see Sophia all tangled up in these sharp vines, showing us just how lonely her past really was. Cyril gets super emotional seeing how much things have changed, since Malady was totally alone in the original story, but now she's finally surrounded by friends who care. Cyril asks Sophia if he can step away for a bit, and she gives him the green light right away. Everything goes dead silent as Sophia, Libert, and the prince stay at the table, finally alone to finish their talk. Cyril picks up a violin and starts playing, and the music is so good that everyone at the party is instantly hooked. He realizes that with the big shots totally focused on their own intense debate, the rest of the crowd is going to get bored fast without something to watch. Cyril starts playing his music to make sure Sophia and the others can talk in peace, and he's not stopping until he hears another instrument join in. He looks over to see Sophia jamming right beside him, and their music starts blending into this totally epic and unexpected duet. Cyril asks if she's finally done, but she snaps that they only have a rough plan and blames him for totally cutting her off. She says she couldn't just stand there while he was having all the fun, and honestly, playing together like this is actually a total blast. As they keep their dance going, Sophia gives Cyril a smirk and reminds him she's actually been wanting to dance with him since the new student welcome party. He remembers she already knows his secret, but he can't answer her because the moment he admits it, he can't just be her butler anymore, so he lets their music say everything he's holding back. The show wraps up, and Sophia and the butlers start clapping like crazy. With the crowd still cheering their heads off, Cyril and Sophia stand together as he thanks everyone and tells them to go have a blast at the rest of the party. Alicia rushes over to tell Cyril he totally crushed it, making him get all flustered as Sophia watches the whole thing go down. Alicia is totally geeking out over the performance, explaining how Sophia-sama had the whole crowd hooked before Cyril Sands joined in with his smooth playing to create a perfect duet. Sophia's grinning because their duet was a total hit, and Alicia Sheely admits she's dying for a chance to perform with her too. Alicia nervously grips her hands and admits she's not as good as Cyril Sand, but she really wants to perform with Sophia-sama, and shyly asks if it's okay. Sophia flashes a massive, genuine smile and says she'd love to perform with her, leaving Alicia totally speechless. Sophia notices Alicia forgot her violin, so Cyril jumps in to offer his own, and she's totally down to use it. Alicia grabs the violin from Cyril, looking totally hyped and ready to crush it as she gives him a huge thank you. Asia shouts that it's finally time to play, and the two girls dive into their duet, looking totally locked in and hyped about the music they're making together. Zalicia and Sophia jump into a surprise duet that totally stuns the crowd, leaving Cyril, Prince Alforth, and all the guests staring in pure awe. Cyril takes the chance to check on the other guests and asks where his violin is, only to find out it's already been moved to the noble course's tower. The prince's servant asks Cyril to grab something right away, and he's totally on board, realizing his plan to distract the guests worked a bit too well since the duet looks like it's going to last forever. Libert strolls up behind Cyril, checks out the vibe, and says with a grin that the party is going awesome. Cyril apologizes for leaving him alone, but Libert is super chill about it, making Cyril realize the prince isn't like those other snobby elitists at all. Cyril asks if he finally believes the princess is legit, and Libert actually mumbles an apology, admitting the prince's actions proved he's totally serious. Cyril's totally lost and asks why he's even apologizing, but Libert just says nothing and takes a sip of his drink, leaving him hanging. Libert points out that this tea party is the first time they can finally talk for real without worrying about anyone eavesdropping on them. Watching the show, Libert thinks it makes total sense why everyone loves these talented and beautiful girls. But he's actually shocked they aren't part of the snobby elitist group. Everyone thinks Sophia has every right to act special because of her high status. But Cyril shuts that down, arguing that her talent isn't just luck, and that she's actually just a massive hard worker. Libert watches the duo on stage and thinks Sophia is only winning because Cyril is backing her up, but Cyril shuts that idea down instantly. Cyril switches back to business and asks if the plan for selling the crepes is still on track, which totally catches Liberdorf guard off guard. Libert's totally sure about opening that shop in the capital and splitting the cash with his merchants, so even though Cyril warns him to keep it a secret, Libert is convinced everything's gonna go perfectly. Libert just smiles and says it's all good, totally convinced after that duet that Cyril would never turn on his mistress, and while Cyril agrees to go along with it as long as his lady wins, he still looks like he's got some serious doubts. Cyril tries to play it cool and act like he's not involved, claiming he's basically a total newbie when it comes to business. Libra fires back, revealing that Sophia-sama herself said Cyril would boost profits by 10 times, making Cyril freak out and cry over the massive pressure of her expectations. Cyril bows and admits he can't handle those crazy demands, so he suggests selling the crepes to the rich nobles first before moving on to the regular people. Cyril's totally shocked when Libert shouts that he never even thought of that move, and even though Cyril tries to apologize for stating the obvious, Libert insists it wasn't obvious at all. Lieber explains that trends always start with the rich before hitting the streets, and he's totally realizing how genius that simple plan actually is. Cyril suggests making some fancy crepes and a seasonal menu before heading back to his lady, while Libert realizes that commoners usually don't think about selling to nobles first because their lives are just worlds apart. Cyril starts to walk away, but Libert suddenly grabs his arm and tells him to hold up. Libert is totally locked into business mode now, staring Cyril down and demanding every single detail while promising to pay whatever it takes. Cyril tries to head back to his lady, but Libert reveals she already gave them the green light to talk, making Cyril finally realize why she trusted this guy to skyrocket their sales while Sophia and the prince start their own duet. Sophia says their talk was super helpful, and while the prince fumbles with his violin, He finally realizes this partnership is going to make their sales blow up 10 times over. Cyril looks over at the stage and smirks, feeling pretty good that they actually listened to him. Laurel asks Libert if he's going to play a duet with Alicia too, but Libert just says he's going to hold back for now. Cyril keeps pushing because he's sure Alicia would love to play, but Libert admits that after seeing her epic duet with Sophia Sama, he's way too intimidated to ask, and decides to just go hang out with the other nobles instead. Prince Alforth looks absolutely crushed, clearly hating himself for how badly he just messed up. Cyril takes one look at the prince's slumped shoulders and knows he failed again, so he asks him what's wrong. The prince starts tearing up and asks if the massive skill gap was obvious during their duet, making Cyril realize the prince knows exactly how much he's struggling. Alicia suddenly bursts in, shouting that she totally gets his pain because she felt just as crushed and useless when she had to dance with a Cyril Sand who was way better than her. While the prince is busy feeling sorry for himself, Alicia gives him a quick pep talk that makes something finally click in his head. Alicia perks up and suggests they all train as a team so they don't get wrecked later, and while the prince and the girls are totally hyped, Cyril looks like he's having a complete meltdown. Melissa is totally freaking out, whispering to Cyril that Alicia just used the prince as a stepping stone to get exactly what she wants. Two students notice the prince is actually being chill with the commoners, and Cyril gives Alicia a proud smile for totally pulling it off. Cyril walks right up to the fanciful Sama under a massive chandelier and gives her a polite greeting, saying it's great to see her again. Fall just smirks, admitting she really wanted to catch him off guard by showing up out of nowhere. Carol is totally shocked to see her and asks how she even got in, but she just teases him that it's a secret. So when he asks Miss Mysterious why she's there, she just says mystery makes a girl way more charming. She stops joking around and gets dead serious, making it clear she's only there to see how the test finally ends. She turns away and gives him props for making Prince Alforth look like he's not some stuck-up elitist, saying she's heard nothing but good things about his work. Cyril thinks her praise is way too quiet, while Full realizes that getting the princess her spot back was always a super confusing goal from the start. Full slams her gavel down to show she's the boss, shouting that nobody else's opinion matters because she's the only one who decides if they win or lose. She reveals the whole tea party was just a big flex to show off their win, so the king and queen would step in and finally force Falls to make a move. Cyril realized Fall was actually trying to fail them on purpose, but she totally shocked him when she suddenly announced they passed with zero hesitation. Cyril is totally shocked and stammers to ask if they really passed, but Fola just tells him she's dead serious about her choice. Watching the party go perfectly, Fall admits she's actually blown away because she never thought he could pull off such an awesome scene. Cyril asks if the violin duet was what finally won her over, and Fola teases him for totally planning the whole show just to steal her heart. She gives him a smirk and says she never expected him to be such a sneaky jerk. Carol finally realizes that even though she wants friends, she keeps pushing everyone away and cutting ties because she knows she's destined to die. The prince and Alicia spot her and head over, the prince giving a friendly shout to Fullman while Alicia asks what she's even doing there. Alicia gets a sneaky look in her eye and leans right into a stunned Cyril's face, teasing him that she's totally gonna tell Sophia he was flirting with another pretty girl. Daryl reveals that the woman is actually Falzand, the head of the student council, and explains that the whole mission to connect the prince with commoners was just a secret test for him and... Cyril introduces the noble Alicia from the Lawnbell family to the student council president. Cyril decides to keep it a secret that Alicia is actually the prince's cousin, since even his own lady has no clue they're related yet. Alicia finally figures out Cyril's plan to join the student council, and gets so hyped that she announces she's joining too, leaving him totally speechless. Alicia wants to pay Sophia and Cyril back for all their help by joining the student council, but they have to turn her down because there aren't any spots left. Just when it looks like it's all over, Prince Alforth steps in and says Falls is totally wrong. He drops the bomb that he knows she's the only member left instead of the usual 5 or 6, and she's totally caught off guard. Cyril tries to step in because he knows Fall was just being polite, but the prince ignores the hint and straight up asks to join the student council. When Full asks why he's joining, the prince says he wants to team up with everyone, making her realize he knows she's in a jam but still wants to have her back. Cole tells him they've already got enough people, but the prince fires back that since the council is supposed to fix his reputation, having extra members is actually a win. The prince totally traps her with logic, claiming the student council is the best way to fix his reputation, and she's so flustered she's left completely speechless. Cyril admits it's a smart play, but he tells the prince to chill out so it doesn't look like he's using his royal status to bully his way into the council. The prince takes the advice to heart, realizes Cyril is totally right, and says he's sorry for being way too pushy. Alicia ignores all the drama and tells everyone she'll do any job, even the boring chores, just to be part of the student council. Full stares at Alicia in total shock, completely shaken up by how real and honest her plea was. Cyril sees right through her fake hesitation and realizes she doesn't actually have a problem with them. He finally realizes she's just trying to protect everyone from the dark future she thinks is coming for her. But then, Cyril's eyes get that serious look as he starts cooking up a brand new plan. Cyril realizes that being stuck in a fancy cage isn't real happiness, and he knows that helping out is actually the best way to look out for his lady too. Cyril gives a sweet smile and tells the shocked foal that everyone is welcome to join, because honestly, the more people there are, the better it is for her. She cracks a little smirk on her fake lips, totally loving his wild new plan. She sighs as she looks over at the glowing ballroom and teases him again, whispering that he's seriously such a bully. Joining the student council didn't get him out of class, and now he's stuck writing a massive report on how magic actually works. He looked around and realized that even though they have some crazy magic gear, their actual understanding of magic is still super basic. He realized magic tools were basically just there to hype up the player's experience, doing everything from making the streets look pretty to using flashy spotlights so every moment felt totally epic. Cyril was totally stuck on this assignment because he couldn't just turn in junk, but he knew that using his insane magic knowledge from his past life would cause a massive scene. Cyril handed in his report, but a senior member called him out for being way too boring compared to his usual top-tier work. So Cyril apologized for playing it safe and promised to. The council member casually brings up Cyril joining the team and totally nails the guess that Alicia and Alforth are tagging along too, which Cyril says is 100% true. Anyway, the council member mentioned the school festival is coming up, and since Cyril is the class rep, he's gonna be totally slammed, so he needs to find a backup before things get crazy. Cyril asks if he can pick literally anyone for the job, and the council member says go for it, as long as they're just as talented and hardworking as Cyril is. The council member took off after telling Cyril to focus up, and that he was counting on him, which had Cyril seriously thinking about finding someone else to do his work for him. Right then, his classmates Chloe and Luke popped up and asked what he was talking about with that senior. Cyril explained he needed a sub for his class rep duties since he's joining the student council, and right then, Chloe just smacked Luke right across the face. Luke's fuming and demands to know what that was for, but Chloe snaps back at him for blabbing secrets, while Cyril calmly reminds them that his new student council gig is still supposed to be a secret. Luke was totally rattled and could only let out a gasp as Cyril coolly bragged that he already knew the leak came from either Luke's secret master or his teacher. Luke scrambled to cover his tracks by claiming he heard it from another student, but Cyril wasn't buying it since his first reaction totally blew his cover. Cyril says he was actually going to pick Lucas's proxy, but after that huge mess-up, he's not so sure anymore, making Lucas freak out and promise he'll never fail again. Cyril knew Luke was actually a pro, even if he seemed sketchy, and right then, Luke was literally begging with his hands together to take his place. Luke screamed as Chloe told Cyril she was done cleaning up Luke's dumb messes, asking to put the decision on hold and leaving Cyril to figure out the next move. Luke just flashed a big grin and told Cyril not to sweat it because he'd be an awesome stand-in, plus he already knew the perfect person to be his assistant. Luke kept hyping them up, saying they're already super skilled and feel bad for what they did, which actually got Cyril curious. Luke flashed a big smile and bragged that his teacher always told him to learn from his mistakes, which totally caught Cyril off guard. Cyril finally gave in and said Luke could fill in for him when student council work gets too crazy. But first, Luke has to make sure the new assistant actually wants the job, and he's totally down for the challenge. Luke was feeling super hyped and yelled, "Just leave it to me!" so loud that he totally spooked Cyril, who was just sitting at his desk nearby. The crew headed straight for the middle school student council room and gave a polite heads up as they reached the door. Cyril, Alicia, Alforth, and a girl with dark hair stood at the entrance, totally hyped to start their first day on the job. Cyril walks in and spots a girl so buried in her paperwork that she doesn't even look up when they arrive, even with her maid standing right there. Sarah noticed wind magic leaking out of the girl and realized she was dealing with a massive power overload just like Melody. But using that energy to stay cool was honestly a genius move. He had a hunch and decided to test it by poking the girl, making her let out a super surprised squeak. The girl finally noticed them and just let out a little "ah," while Alforth and the dark-haired girl stood there feeling super awkward. The girl cleared her throat and announced that they were all officially on the student council starting right now, deciding that introductions were just a total waste of time. Fola told them to just chill since there was no work left, but she was totally shocked when Cyril suddenly raised his hand to ask a question. He casually told Cyril he didn't need to raise his hand because the school rules say everyone is equal here, no matter their rank. Cyril and Alforth shared a look, thinking it was wild that a royal of all people was preaching about equality. The girl with the black hair took that totally to heart and started cheering, shouting that they were all officially friends now. This squad is a total mix. Cyril's a commoner, Alicia's a high-class noble, Full is a secret prince hiding as a regular guy, Outforth is royalty, and the dark-haired girl is a lower noble. Paul turns back to Cyril to hear his question, but he calls her out for doing paperwork after she said she was free, making her maid realize her sickness is actually a cover-up for something else. All held up the papers and explained they weren't work files but her personal diary, leaving Cyril totally confused. She explained that even with the school festival and some random chores coming up, it wasn't a big deal, and they weren't going to be slammed with work. She just brushed them off, saying they were basically treated like royalty there, and she could handle everything herself, even telling them to just head home if they were bored. Alicia jumps in to ask what the other members used to do back then, and the question actually makes her stop and think for a second. The dark-haired girl points to a room nearby and tells them that's where all the old records are stashed. Cyril walked into the room and found a total dusty wreck, but someone was already there trying to scrub the place clean. Zero called out to a startled foal, and the little guy looked totally shocked to see him standing there. Leah the maid tries to apologize for leaving the room, but she gets cut off and told the blame is on her now, which makes Cyril feel like he's the one being framed for. Fowl slammed her hands together and apologized, admitting she was the one who told Leah it was totally fine to skip cleaning the room. The dark-haired girl cheerfully suggested they all clean the room together, which blew everyone's minds since student council members aren't exactly known for doing chores. Cyril immediately shut that down and told them to wait, saying there was no way he'd let noble girls do such back-breaking work. Alicia reminded Cyril that Fall just made everyone equal at the academy, and Alfort stepped in to say Alicia should be their leader for the job. Everyone got super hyped and jumped in to help Alicia, and while Cyril loved their energy, he was still worried it would look totally wrong for a prince and a bunch of nobles to be seen cleaning in public. Cyril suggested a deal where he'd clean up the mess first, and then Melody, Alicia, and the group could finally look for the records they needed. The dark-haired girl looked over at the servants and whispered that she was totally down with Cyril's plan. Cyril headed into the storage room all by himself, telling the rest of the group to just hang back while he got the cleaning started. Cyril stood right in the middle of a glowing magic circle in that dusty room, looking totally ready to use his powers and finish the job. Cyril got a serious look in his eyes and announced it was finally time to show everyone what a real butler can do. The door flew open and shut in a flash, instantly catching the eye of the dark-haired girl waiting right outside. The dark-haired girl walks up to Cyril to check on the cleaning, saying it probably would have been way better if the whole group just helped out. Cyril just flashed a calm smile and told her to relax because he was already done, leaving her gasping in total shock. She peeked past him and yelled that he'd barely even started, but her jaw dropped when she saw the total mess was now suddenly sparkling clean. She was totally stunned to realize he wasn't lying, while the rest of the crew peeked around the door, completely blown away by his crazy transformation. Now that the room was finally clean, one of them said it was time to start digging through those papers to find what they were looking for. The whole crew was huddled around the massive table, grinding through stacks of dusty old books and records. After a while, the dark-haired girl let out a sigh, admitting that digging through all those files was way tougher than she expected. Alforth looked up from a massive book and handed her another one he'd found, asking her to check it out. Alicia reads from a new paper that the student council used to put on plays every single year until 3 years ago, so Cyril asks if she's actually into acting. Alicia thought it over and said playing a role sounded like a total blast, plus racking up student council wins would get her way closer to her own goals. Cyril put his hand over his heart to show he was loyal, telling her that if his malady really wanted to do this, he wasn't going to stand in her way. Alicia was totally fired up and told everyone they should bring back the old tradition and put on a play themselves. The whole squad was totally down for the plan, and even full low-key admitted that doing something this wild once would be a total blast. Seeing that everyone was down for the plan, Alicia flashed a grin and made it official. The deal was done. Cyril pointed out they couldn't start without a script, but Alforth jumped in and said they could use any of the scripts from their old shows. Fall's face totally lit up as she jumped at the chance to handle the script, saying she actually knows someone who could help them out. Next, we jump into a classic play where a prince sneaks into a party to save a low-ranking noble girl. They parted ways without even catching each other's names, but those old feelings came rushing back the moment they ran into each other at the academy. Things got super messy because the prince was already engaged, and our girl was totally losing it over their forbidden love. With a little help from her maid, she finally got real about her feelings, and she and the prince fell even harder for each other every time they hung out. Just like you'd expect, the princess couldn't handle being dumped, so she started playing dirty and bullying the heroine just to get her man back. The prince finally caught his fiancée being a total snake, punished her for it, and saved our girl from that nightmare. Their love finally wins it all as they share a huge kiss, with the whole kingdom cheering for their perfect happy ending. A few days after they finished sorting those papers, the student council met back up at the table. Full showed off a script from a friend to see what they thought, but the second Cyril started reading, his face went totally blank with shock. He stared at the script titled The Espressivo of Light and Darkness, and got total chills because he realized he already knew this story. Cyril totally freaked out when he realized the script in his hands was the exact same Otomi game from his past life. Cyril was totally freaked out when he realized this whole world was actually the Otomi game he remembered, Espressivo of Light and Darkness. He stared at the script and realized the title was way too familiar, and as he read through it, he knew his worst fears were actually 100% true. While the whole council waited to see how he'd react, Fall turned to a totally shook Cyril and asked what he thought of her script. Cyril's head was spinning with crazy ideas, thinking that since this world was literally a game, some weird program might have turned the actual game data into a real-life script right in. Cyril's jaw hit the floor when she casually mentioned her random tutor wrote the script for fun, making him realize this guy might be another reincarnated person just like him. She flashed a sneaky grin while watching Cyril struggle, making it look like this whole script was a total setup for him to find. Cyril quickly got his act together and said the story was a total classic with the perfect number of roles for their big show. She agreed with him way too fast, but that only made Cyril's bad feeling grow even faster. He figured the script was just a way to track down other reincarnated people, so he played it safe and asked the rest of the group what they thought. Alicia suggested they dig up info on the tutor who wrote the script, and since everyone was dying to know why a pro like Folo wasn't in the original game, they all agreed and Folo shouted that it was finally time to pick the cast. They listed off the roles: Prince, Heroine, Maid, Villainess, Butler, and Narrator. And since the count matched the group perfectly, Cyril the Maid decided it was definitely time to keep. Before anyone else could even get a word out, Alicia's hand shot up with a massive smile as she announced she wanted to be the villain. Everyone just froze in total silence, staring at Alicia because they were completely shocked by her wild decision. Cyril asked if Alicia was really serious about being a villain since it was the total opposite of her holy maiden reputation, and seeing his doubt, she worriedly asked if it was a bad idea. Full told Alicia her choice was totally cool, and hearing that, Alforth stepped up and decided he'd be the prince. The roles are finally set. Full is our hero. Sophia is the big villain. Elville. Alforth is playing Prince Alfred. Alicia is the maid Karine. And Cyril is pulling double duty as both the narrator and the butler Curif. Full suggested they start practicing solo, but Alicia admitted she had no way to find an acting coach back home, leaving them both totally stuck on what to do next. Alicia's face totally lit up when she remembered an ad for an acting teacher at Kakwendo Gakuen, and she knew right then it was the perfect fix for their problem. With a sneaky grin, Full suddenly pointed at a shocked Cyril and joked that everyone should just hit him up for a private lesson instead. Cyril was totally confused and asked why they were bringing him up, but Fall just said it's because he's already a natural at acting. Gerald tried to bail by saying he knew zero about theater, but Alicia wasn't listening and told him he'd definitely crush it. Alicia leaned in close with a blush and whispered to Cyril that this was the perfect chance to become friends, asking if he'd be down to teach them. Cyril was totally thrown off by how bold she was being, and since her words were saying yes while her heart said no, he knew he had to handle this mixed signal super carefully. Alicia suggested that Cyril should lead their practice sessions until they could find a real professional coach to help them out. Cyril remembered tutoring the girl's cousin before she got a pro teacher, so when he realized they wanted the same deal, he just played it cool and said, "As you wish." Fall stepped up with a smug grin and mocked him for having zero acting skills, but Alicia jumped right in to say she was sure he knew exactly what he was doing. Cyril thought about it for a second, and then promised to master those skills ASAP so he could teach the whole squad. He flashed a confident grin, held up 3 fingers, and asked if they could just give him 3 days. Everyone's jaws dropped at that crazy 3-day deadline, but the rest of the crew was hyped and asked if he'd really be their teacher, and of course, Cyril said yes. Later that night at the Rosenberg Margate Manor, Alicia made Cyril stack up every acting book they had so she could pick out the best ones for their practice. Cyril buried himself in a mountain of books to study, and told the servants to track down a local theater group so he could go watch them practice. Cyril was totally glued to his book, while Alicia and her maid Lucy just stood back and watched him being completely locked in. Alicia told Lucy to let Cyril know she wanted to talk once he finished his research, and Lucy promised to get the word to him. A bit later, Cyril walks into Alicia's room, finds her staring out the window, and asks why she called for him. Alicia spun around looking totally devastated, catching Cyril off guard as she cried out, asking why he won't even look her in the eye. Cyril knew this feeling all too well, realizing his massive heartbreak was about to explode into a terrifying, out-of-control rage. This time he was totally stumped, having zero clue what he did to make her freak out like that. Cyril desperately tried to calm her down, swearing she had it all wrong, and that everything he did was for her because she's the only thing on his mind. He poured his heart out, but Alicia let out a tiny oof while trying not to laugh, and they both just froze there in total shock. Alicia checked her script and called him out, saying his big speech was totally wrong, and he was actually supposed to be giving the prince's love confession to Aurelia. Cyril was totally lost and just blurted out, "What?" But once Alicia explained she was only practicing her lines, he started apologizing like crazy because her acting was so real he thought she was actually in trouble, which totally caught her off guard. Cyril played it off smooth by saying he's always watching her since he's her servant. Then he quickly asked if she'd memorized the script, making a blushing Alicia admit she only knew her own lines. He was totally blown away by how fast she memorized her lines, and Alicia admitted she was just as shocked because the words felt like they were already living inside her head. Alicia admits she really vibes with the Villainess, but Cyril begs her to stop since he's working overtime to keep her from turning evil too. Alicia asked for his honest opinion, and a totally blown away Cyril told her she's basically a natural-born pro at acting. Alicia told him to skip the fake praise and give her the real truth. So Cyril suggested that since her character is about to fall into darkness, she should focus on the sadness and pain instead. Alicia took his advice and tried the line again, her voice sounding totally crushed as she asked why he never looks at her. She was so insanely perfect that Cyril got total chills, feeling like he was about to be executed all over again, and he scrambled to hide how shook he was when she asked what was wrong. They skipped ahead to the scene where the Villainess tells her butler Caliph to get rid of the heroine, and Cyril instantly jumps into character, shouting that he could never do such a thing. Alicia went full boss mode, snapping at him to shut up and asking if he was really trying to ignore her orders on purpose. Cyril looked at the script and rolled his eyes at the weak butler, promising himself that he'd smash every single death flag in his lady's way no matter what. He's dead set on saving her, but if she ever turns bad, he'll follow her straight to rock bottom without a second thought. Cyril gets back and asks if this is really what she wants, and after a super tense silence, Alicia quietly but firmly says yes. She sounded totally serious as she shouted that she'd do literally anything just to win the heart of the person she loves most. She was totally locked in, declaring that even if she had to fight the gods themselves, she was never letting go of her true love. Totally blown away by her performance, Cyril clutched his chest and swore to follow her every command, promising that if Lady Sophia wanted it, he'd make it happen even if it ended. Alicia thanks him and tells him to get some rest, but Cyril says that with her backing him up, he's basically invincible, and nothing can stop him from winning. The intense practice session ended in a flash as Alicia broke character and flashed Lucy a huge smile, dying to know what she thought of their acting. Lucy didn't hold back and told them that even though they were perfect for the roles, they played the scene like a total romance instead of following the actual story. Then she called out an even bigger fail, pointing out that they both used their real names instead of their character names during the scene. Cyril and Alicia just stood there totally frozen, faces turning bright red as a super awkward silence took over. They both looked away super fast, their faces turning bright red as they realized they just accidentally said exactly what was on their minds. Cyril was totally freaking out and called for a quick break, while Lucy just sighed at the super cheesy romance happening right in front of her. Cyril gave Alicia some major props, admitting he was actually super impressed by her skills. She spoke up and said she actually really relates to Elville. She kept going, saying that if someone stole the person she loved, she'd go totally insane with jealousy, just like the character in the play. Alicia quickly apologizes for being weird, but Cyril tells her it's totally fine since Elville is basically just her raised in a different way, so she shouldn't even stress about it. Cyril looked her right in the eyes and swore he'd never do anything to make her feel jealous. Delitia is totally tripping over her words, but Cyril just plays it cool and says it's only natural since he's her personal butler. Alicia joked that he was being a bully, then she switched gears back to the play to ask what made him want to start acting in the first place. She said this was all for her own goals, but Cyril figured she was actually trying to play matchmaker between nobles and commoners, with him being the commoner in her little game. Then Alicia cutely admitted that, more than anything, she just wanted to be on stage right next to him. She thought back to how awesome their violin duet was, and said it made her want to try all sorts of new things with him. Cyril admitted he was super bummed she wasn't the main star since he thought she'd be a perfect hero, and he really wanted to know why she chose to play the villain instead. Alicia just straight up said that being the main heroine wasn't her vibe at all. She flashed a huge, honest smile and explained that her fingerprints wouldn't be left anywhere on the stage. Then the focus jumps right over to Luke. He hyped up the whole class, announcing that since Cyril was stuck with student council work, he was taking over as the festival rep and was ready to hear all their project ideas. The whole class went totally wild, shouting out ideas for cafes and haunted houses, so Luke had to step in and tell everyone to chill out and wait their turn. A classmate asks Cyril if he's tired of working for Luke, but Cyril shuts them down fast, saying he's actually just annoyed that Luke isn't the leader this time. The classmate said that during the welcome party, Cyril's whole squad wouldn't stop hyping him up. Cyril confidently told them Luke learned the ropes as his assistant at the party, so they're totally covered. Though his classmate was super bummed because he really wanted to see Cyril lead the team himself. Cyril explained that his classmate should have been the rep since he's got the second best grades, and the guy straight up admitted he was salty about the whole thing. His classmate flashed a confident smirk, claiming that if he just kept his eyes on Luke, he'd be able to learn everything too. Luke stepped up and told Cyril to just gather everyone's ideas while he handled the writing, making Cyril realize he didn't need to stress at all. Later that day, school finally let out and Sarah was walking down the hall with Sophia and her maid. He spotted Alicia and told Sophia he had to bounce because it was time for his acting lessons with Lady Alicia. As he walks over, Alicia gets super serious and asks why he won't look at only her, leaving him totally stunned because that "only me" part definitely wasn't in the script. Alicia's turned bright red and just stood there frozen, totally dying of embarrassment. Cyril's heart sank as he realized she wasn't faking a single word, and Alicia desperately begged him to finally just look at her and nobody else. Cyril shut his eyes and told her that if he only stared at her, he wouldn't be able to protect her from any other dangers. Alicia gets all flustered and blames him for looking at other people, which totally confuses Cyril since she's the one who asked for acting lessons in the first place. Cyril noticed something was off and asked her what was going on. She got all shy and explained that the script actually has a kiss scene, meaning he's going to be her partner for the whole thing while they practice. The guy just stared in total shock, stuttering that yeah, that was the plan, but he had no clue why it even mattered right now. He had to remind her that Lady Alicia is playing the maid, not the main character, because she totally forgot about that. Alicia froze in shock as the weight of her massive mistake finally hit her. She finally remembers Alicia is actually the maid and not the heroine, but her confusion makes Cyril suspect she has memories from the original game, so he decides to be way more careful from now on. Cyril said he had to get moving right now because he couldn't keep Lady Alicia waiting any longer. Alicia says sorry for slowing him down, but Cyril stops to ask if she's really okay with him heading out. Sophia softly called his name and told him they'd be stuck there forever if he didn't finally get moving. She gave him a super sweet smile and asked him to come back soon. Cyril hits up practice room C and finds Alicia already waiting, and she immediately says sorry for the delay. Cyril stared at her in total shock and asked what she was wearing, but she just casually told him it was her gym uniform and tracksuit. He suddenly remembered that even though this world looked like an old-school kingdom, it actually had some surprisingly modern stuff mixed in. Alicia shyly asked if she looked weird, since it felt super awkward for a fancy noble girl like her to be wearing a tracksuit. Cyril promised her she didn't look weird at all, saying her black hair against that red tracksuit looked just like a sunset where the day and night blur together. He says the magic hour is easily the most beautiful part of the entire day. His smooth compliment definitely worked, making Alicia blush and look away while her maid gave him a total death stare, and you could really see how her outfit matched the beautiful image he just described. Enough with the small talk. Cyril announced it was finally time to get to work and start with the basics. Once they finished their vocal exercises, Cyril praised her singing but told her to fix her posture, and while her maid got all defensive, Alicia just smiled and thanked him for the tip. One maid noticed Alicia is learning way faster than ever and called Cyril a great tutor, but Melissa immediately called her out for doubting Lady Sophia's choices, forcing her to apologize on the spot. Cyril played it cool and said he totally got why they doubted him, but Melissa was starting to think no 12-year-old could be this smart, and straight up asked if he was secretly way older. Cyril promised he was exactly as old as he looked. Then he handed Alicia a script and told her warm-ups were over because it was time to start her real role. Alicia got that look in her eyes and told everyone she was totally ready to go. Alicia started her act, welcoming Lady Aurelia home and letting her know that dinner was finally ready. Cyril listened closely and realized that while she knew her lines by heart, her acting was honestly just mid. Either she was still a rookie, or he was just way too good for her to keep up. They kept reading through the script until they finally hit the most intense part of the whole story. Cyril reads the part where Elville's plan to have thugs jump Aurelia is exposed, and now she and her butler are finally getting busted. Alicia went all in on her role as the maid Karina, swearing that Cyril and Sophia were innocent and demanding a redo of the investigation with a performance that was honestly kind of legendary. Cyril didn't say a word, but he could tell the maid had totally lost her mind. Cyril reminded Alicia it was all just a show, and even if they were acting like themselves, they were still just playing the parts of the villain and the butler. He apologized for getting way too hyped up, and told everyone they should probably take a break from this wild rehearsal. While they were chilling out, Cyril asked Alicia how she felt now that her very first acting lesson was finally over. Alicia told him she was really struggling to get into her role as the maid Karina, and when Cyril asked why, she admitted the character was just super weird, which left Cyril wondering if... Cyril asked what she had against the main girl, and she said Aurelia was way too nice to be real, like her whole innocent vibe was just a total act. She got super heated and shouted about how much she hated the heroine for stealing the prince from Elville, making Cyril realize she was basically just roasting herself. Alicia shut that down instantly, so Cyril told her that if she won't give up, she'll have to make her crush dump their fiancé. Alicia shouted that hitting on the prince while Elville was gone was straight up cheating, and her maid knew it was going to take some serious willpower to actually stick to that. Their heated argument suddenly cut to a super awkward silence as they both just stood there staring each other down. Cyril suddenly remembered Alicia asking him to dance right in front of his own girl, and he started to wonder if that was what she'd been talking about this entire time. Cyril finally got it and asked her what she would have done if she was in that same spot. She points right at them with total confidence and shouts that it's time for a duel. Cyril let out a massive sigh of relief after dodging that total disaster, silently begging her to pick anything except a duel. Right in the middle of the academy, Alforth is practicing his big confession, shouting that she's the only person he's thought about since the very first day they met. He kept going, saying he only serves one girl, and honestly, Aurelia doesn't even come close because she's way more beautiful. Alforth completely lost his cool and yelled that it was a total lie because Miss Sophia is way cuter than both of them combined. Cyril could only watch as Alforth totally ditched his role as the prince, choosing his feelings for Sophia over the entire play. Cyril let out a tired sigh, realizing that was already the second person to totally ditch the script during their practice. Practice was pure chaos, and honestly, they were starting to forget where the acting ended and their real lives began. Cyril told Alforth to just chill for a second so they could finally get their practice back on track. He tried to get the talk back to the play by saying they were focused on the villain Elville and not Sophia, but he was dying inside because Alforth saw them as the same person. Forth snapped back that Sophia would look gorgeous whether she was the villain or just a side character, making Cyril sigh in total annoyance. Earl told the prince to stick to his role and then mentioned how cute Fall was, which finally got Alforth to shut his mouth. Cyril noticed the prince couldn't even get into character because everyone was fighting over the two heroines, who were actually his own cousins. After a whole month of non-stop tutoring, Cyril finally decided it was time for them to give it another shot. He walks into the student council room and finds Fall totally locked into her writing, and she looks up in total shock, asking when he even got there. Cyril caught her using magic on her diary again and apologized for the interruption, reminding her that she was the one who actually let him in. Fall was totally tripping over her words, so Cyril asked why she was still being so formal with him. Cyril's whole vibe suddenly flipped as he dropped to one knee, apologizing for messing up and calling her by her full title, Your Highness Princess Foljana. She was completely shook the moment her secret identity was finally exposed. She finally admitted that even though her secret was buried deep, it wasn't impossible to find, and since he already knew the truth, she stopped lying about being an earl's adopted daughter at the school. Cyril asked if she'd finally told Miss Sophia the truth about who she really was. Then he dropped to one knee and admitted his lady still had no idea. Fall asked why he was keeping his mistress in the dark, but Cyril explained he was only staying quiet to keep her safe. Then he asks if he's right that she wants to keep her real identity a secret from Sophia. Cyril reminded her she wanted to be treated like an equal, and that's the only reason he kept her secret safe. Fall had to admit the guy was totally right and had clearly thought this whole thing through. She thanked him for the compliment and admitted he really was a genius like everyone said, so she told him to stand up and just call her Miss Fall since they were both on the student council. Cyril stood up and agreed to keep calling her Miss Fall, which totally caught her off guard since she thought he'd stop being so formal now that he knew her secret. He asked why she wanted to see him, reminding her that you don't exactly say no when a princess calls. Cyril checked in to see how the acting lessons were going, and she told him they'd been practicing their roles with him non-stop. He said his lady was doing just fine, but the prince and Lady Alicia were totally struggling, and he was barely holding it together himself. He finally admitted they were never cut out for acting, and their only real struggle was trying to stay in character. He noticed Fall didn't care about their struggle at all, and he started suspecting she already knew they were game characters, and just thought it was fun to watch them fail to get in. She acted like she didn't know a single thing about the game, forcing him to stay on guard until he could figure out what she was really up to. Cyril decides it's finally time to step up and handle this mess. Since they both know they need a fix, he's finally reaching out for some advice. He tells her she needs to focus on building her own character role, so she asks him if he knows any awesome spots for a training camp. She's convinced this is the fastest way to toughen him up, but he's looking super nervous about it. He's worried the prince won't even be allowed to leave, but she's totally sure she can talk his parents into it. He pushes her to talk to them right away, so she agrees to check with her bosses and the Lord before he can even ask another question. She calls her out for the sudden change, reminding her that she used to want to stay far away from everyone. She admits it's true, but since she's already in this mess, she's going all the way to the end. He realizes she's totally serious when she asks about the training camp again, and he remembers a perfect summer resort from Libert's route in the game. We find out Alicia's parents actually locked her up just because she fell for a regular guy named Libert. The moment Melissa told him everything, Libert bolted straight to her side. He begged her dad like crazy, and the guy finally agreed to the engagement as long as Libert learned how to act like a fancy noble. And that's exactly how they ended up at that elite noble training camp at the summer resort. Cyril knows he'll blow his cover as a reincarnated soul if he explains too much, so he just asks Sophia about her debt and suggests they get Mr. Liberty to find them a spot. She thinks it over and realizes that making up at the tea party was a good start, but she needs a massive move to really lock in their friendship. He agrees it's the perfect way to show nobles and commoners hanging out, and she's totally on board with that idea. The whole squad finally pulls up to this sick beach resort right by the ocean. One of the girls is totally blown away by how epic the view looks. Prince Alforth and the rest of the squad have finally made it to their camp. They're met by a whole row of guys bowing low in a super dramatic welcome. Alicia is feeling super overwhelmed by this huge, flashy welcome. Cyril tells her not to worry because they aren't a bother, and it's actually making the Liberty family look super good. He explains how these new noble connections are going to be a total game changer for their crate business. Next, Liberty's dad, the big boss of the Liqueur Merchant Association, gives a formal welcome to Prince Alforth, Lady Sophia, and Lady Alicia. Both squads square up to give each other a formal greeting. Prince Alforth thanks him for coming through at the last second and asks if he's going to be staying there too. Liberty's dad says he's staying at a villa close by to give them space, but he's totally ready to help if they need him. The prince realizes this move is a genius way to guard the crepe recipe, while still making some big-time connections. Then someone steps up and offers to lead them straight to their rooms. The whole squad and their staff are strutting down this super fancy hallway. Cyril stops to check out all the fancy art and expensive decorations. He notices the Liqueur Association's resort looks way more like a massive mansion for some rich noble. The squad keeps heading deeper into this massive, epic-looking hallway. Alicia realizes her dad didn't give the okay on the wedding because he actually cared about their love. It only happened because both families were finally on the same level. They stop right outside Lady Sophia's room, and Cyril starts wondering what love is actually all about. It shows the fight against the system, putting the powerful nobles right against one person standing all alone. He's seriously wondering why all these thoughts are hitting him at a time like this. He snaps back into it and decides he doesn't care about death flags anymore, because his only job is to protect his lady. He's totally focused on helping her rule the student council and making sure their school play is a massive hit. Cyril gets super serious and tells everyone they need to start practicing their roles the second they finish unpacking. Prince Alforth was so stunned he actually shouted his name out loud. Sophia's worried about jumping right in after their long trip, but even though Cyril says they don't have to, Prince Alforth is totally ready to get started. And Prince Shara's got that look on his face like he's finally ready to get serious. And the prince gets everyone super hyped to finally get things started. Cyril was hanging around for the squad, and since Sophia and Fall were taking forever to get dressed, he figured they should just kick things off without them. Then the prince rolls up in a tracksuit, and while it's totally weird seeing him look so casual, it suddenly hits him that his lady is probably going to be dressed just like that too. Right then, Lady Sophia and Miss Fall burst in wearing matching red tracksuits, and even though it was a total shock, they actually looked super cool. Sophia looked super elegant as always, but seeing her in a basic tracksuit and indoor shoes was a total shock. Sophia felt super self-conscious and asked if she looked weird, but Cyril was low-key thinking that she was way too pretty for any outfit to look bad on her. Cyril gave her a smooth smile and promised she'd look stunning no matter what she wore, and even though she called him a total flirt, he could tell she was secretly loving every second of it. Alicia was super hyped about the plan, and the whole squad looked ready to jump straight into practice. Cyril decides to start with the scene where the heroine bumps into the prince in disguise, and even though it's hard without music or sets, He tells them to jump right into the part where she's totally lost at the party. Fall was totally down for the plan, and Sophia gave a quiet nod, ready to start the show. She turned bright red as she got ready to drop her first lines, looking totally nervous and hyped up. Everyone was staring at her, super hyped to see how she'd pull off playing the totally lost and panicked lead girl. Sarah watched closely, and since it was his first time seeing her act, he was totally blown away by how she commanded the room without saying a single word. Aurelia is just a low-ranking noble at a big party when she gets separated from her maid, and right as a creepy high noble tries to hit on her, Prince Alforth steps in to save the day. Fall gets all shy as Aurelia, and thanks the prince for the help, while Alforth stays in character, and tells her that keeping her smile safe is the only reward he needs. Cyril could tell the prince was getting way better at acting, but compared to a natural talent like Fall, he was still totally outclassed. Sarah couldn't exactly tell the pros to suck on purpose, but he was stressed that if the acting wasn't even, the prince and Alicia would get totally roasted, dragging the whole cast down with them. So when Fall asked how they did, Sarah just let out a huge sigh and moved them along to the next scene. Cyril paused for a second, and everyone else held their breath, just waiting to hear what he thought. Sophia straight up asked Prince Alforth if he was trying to copy Cyril, and he totally didn't see that coming. Alforth was totally shocked by her sudden accusation and could only stutter, "Just kill me." Cyril was totally cringing because he knew Alforth's acting felt super off, but he was praying that wasn't his actual voice, only for Alforth to excitedly brag that it was. Sophia told Alforth to stop trying so hard to be someone else and just be his true self. Sophia looked at him seriously and told him to just be himself, a prince who's totally in love with the heroine. Forth realized he had to stop acting like Cyril and just be himself, which finally let Cyril feel okay with leaving the prince in the girl's hands. While the others were busy, Cyril wanted to practice the scene with the heroine and her maid, and Alicia was totally down for it. The two girls stood face to face, looking a little shaky but totally ready to jump into their roles. Once practice wrapped up, Fall said they'd hit a wall as a duo, and while Alicia agreed, Cyril secretly noticed that her acting still wasn't nearly as good as Fall's. Fall called her out, saying the real issue wasn't her skills, but that she secretly didn't want the heroine to find love, and man, that really hit Alicia where it hurts. Cyril watched from the sidelines, his brain working overtime to figure out how to help them beat this new challenge. Fall kept lecturing her, saying the maid's job is to help the heroine sneak around with the prince even though he's already engaged, but Alicia was totally grossed out by the whole idea. Alicia was totally caught off guard and could only stutter, "How did you know?" Because Fall's guess was 100% right. Fall just gave a sneaky wink and said her acting was all the proof she needed. Alicia was totally stunned by how much she noticed, but then she jokingly lied and said it wasn't just because she'd already been told the secret. Fall tells Alicia to stop worrying about the heroine's feelings and just focus on her job, because backing up the mistress she looks up to is all the reason she needs. Alicia is totally blown away by what Fall said and just stands there in silence rethinking everything, while Cyril suddenly realizes that this same logic actually applies to Fall's own struggles too. It finally clicked for him that the play's title, The Espressivo of Light and Dark, was actually about the hero saving the prince from the villain, and while he felt bad for the player, the prince was just totally done with the girl his parents forced on him, so meeting the heroine felt like finding real love at last. Cyril realized that while everyone in this world marries for power, actually marrying someone you love is basically unheard of. He told Alicia that the heroine wasn't as clueless as she thought, and actually felt super guilty about the whole situation. He called her out for sneaking around with the prince until he fell for her, saying she must have been a total wreck inside and definitely shouldn't be praised for it. He wondered if feeling guilty meant he could get away with anything, but Cyril quickly told him that wasn't the case at all. He said her secret dates with the prince were just the final result of her heart fighting against her own guilt. One of his friends says that if you give up just because it's forbidden, it's not even real love, and those words really hit Alicia hard. She kept going, saying that if she gave up this easily, her wish would never come true. The whole squad stood together, feeling the massive pressure of the big show as they all thought about why they were really doing this. The room went dead quiet as everyone got ready for the next scene, looking totally locked in but also low-key terrified. Cyril gives Alicia a major reality check, warning her that if she keeps stressing over everyone else's feelings, she's gonna seriously regret it later. His words really hit home for Alicia, and her eyes go wide as everything finally clicks. She turns to a shocked Fall and confidently asks if they can give the scene another shot. Fall is totally down for it, and they both get ready to give their performance another shot. They grinded through their first practice until the sun went down, and they didn't even get to eat dinner until it was basically midnight. After that long day, Cyril headed to the beach for a chill walk under the moonlight to finally get some peace. He heard soft footsteps in the sand behind him and spun around to see a face he totally recognized. He started asking why Lady Sophia was out there all alone, but he totally froze once he actually saw her. It wasn't the Sophia he knew, but a stunning version of her in a white dress who just asked why she'd leave her butler out here all alone. Cyril was totally stuck staring at her, completely blown away by how insane she looked under the moonlight. They just stood there in a super chill silence, listening to the waves crash against the beach under the night sky. Sophia finally broke the silence, asking Cyril if he was doing okay in a super worried voice. Cyril scrambled to apologize, telling her he totally blanked out because she looked so incredible. Sophia wasn't buying it for a second, and called him out for trying to play her with those smooth words. She totally called him out for what he said to Alicia during practice, pointing out that he knew she liked him, but still chose to say those things anyway. Cyril says he was just trying to help her act, but he admits it totally sounds like he's telling her to forget his lady and just come after him with everything she's got. Fia broke down in tears and begged him to explain why he said those things to Alicia, her voice shaking from all the pain and confusion. Cyril put his hand over his heart and told her that as her butler, he'd do whatever it takes to make her wishes come true and make their play a total hit. A single tear rolled down Sophia's face as she whispered that she totally knew he was going to say that. Out of nowhere, the bushes nearby started shaking, and a mysterious figure stepped right out of the shadows. Fall stepped onto the beach and the whole vibe changed, but she was totally shocked to see Sophia and Cyril already there. Sophia is totally freaking out after that surprise interruption, wondering if Fall is going to use her title or just her name, while Cyril basically just thinks, "Yeah, good luck with that." Fall said she got super worried when she couldn't find them, so she came looking and apologized for the trouble. She told Sophia she had something to say, and just like that, everyone was dying to hear it. Fall bowed low and admitted she was totally trying to mess with her when they first got to the student council, and she's super sorry for what she did. Sophia just asked if she had her own reasons for doing it, and Cyril looked totally caught off guard. All explained she was trying her hardest to stay away from everyone, especially Sophia, and even though she was still unsure, she knew she messed up by breaking her own rules. Sophia asked what was up with the rules, and while Fall couldn't explain yet, she did admit she'd been acting like a total jerk. Fall bowed low one more time, apologizing for real and begging her to forgive him. Sophia told her to look up, saying she's a pro at reading people and knew those words weren't real, so she'd already let it go. Fall thanked her with a big smile, and Sophia told her to just call her Sophia from now on. Sophia tells her to drop the formal miss, and Cyril realizes she has no clue Fall is actually a princess, so letting a commoner use her first name is a massive deal. She was totally blown away, her eyes widening as she realized what a massive deal it was to be called a friend by someone like Sophia's stature. Looking super shy but hopeful, Fall asked if she could finally call her Sophia, and Sophia just gave her a huge smile and said, "Of course, Fall." The two girls stood face to face under the stars as a massive new bond started to form between them. Cyril watched them and thought it was wild how they became such close friends, but they totally trust each other and have only gotten closer since that day. The next day, Sophia's lessons with Alicia and the prince were a total success since they already vibed so well together. The training camp was finally paying off, and everyone was getting totally locked into their roles. On the very last day of camp, everything suddenly went totally sideways. Right when things got super intense, Fall suddenly collapsed and crumpled straight to the floor. Everyone scrambled over to her, looking totally shocked and worried as they tried to figure out what just happened. After a quiet breakfast, Cyril told everyone it was finally time for their very last practice session. While the others headed to practice, Cyril stayed behind for a second, looking seriously worried about something. He walked up to Fall while she was sitting all alone, and she looked up totally shocked to see him, asking what was wrong. A single tear falls as she stares at him, and you can just see the total heartbreak in her eyes. Cyril gently lifted her chin, looking super worried but totally determined to figure out what was bothering her. Cyril knelt down and watched her closely, realizing she'd been acting super sus all morning and he was glad he stayed on guard. He saw her red eyes and realized it was mana saturation, a clear sign of mana supercharged syndrome. He remembered her fixing the AC herself instead of letting the maid do it, which was a huge sign she had to burn her own mana, and he knew right then things would end up like this. Her maid rushed over screaming for her lady, and Cyril realized right then that this wasn't just a normal case of mana supercharged syndrome. The maid brings over some medicine while the lady rests on the couch, and you can tell Cyril is totally stressed out just watching her. Fall looked super pale and was dripping with sweat, but she still managed to whisper a thank you to her maid for the medicine. Just as the rest of the squad shows up, Sophia asks if Fall is feeling okay, but the maid totally shuts her down and says she isn't allowed to talk about it. Chilling in her bed, Fall weakly told her maid it was totally fine to just spill whatever was going wrong. The maid told them to chill in the living room while she went to put her lady to bed first. Everyone sat there in a heavy, stressed-out silence, totally freaking out over this sudden and super mysterious illness. Sophia was a total nervous wreck, gripping her hands tight, while Alforth and Alicia just watched her with super serious faces. A little while later, the maid stepped back into the room looking dead serious and stiff as a board. She told them the lady was doing okay for now, and while a relieved Sophia asked if Fall was really safe, the maid's next words totally freaked everyone out. The maid looked totally crushed as she finally admitted the truth. Her lady was dying. The news hit them like a ton of bricks, leaving everyone frozen in total shock as they tried to wrap their heads around it. Cyril asked for the name of the sickness, but the maid wouldn't say, only warning them it was a fatal disease with no cure, even though it wasn't contagious. Cyril totally understood why the maid was keeping it a secret, because people with mana supercharge syndrome are usually treated like they're crazy, and he knew how much people judge others for it. Sophia's voice was shaking as she asked what was happening, and the maid dropped the news that the doctor didn't think she'd even live to see graduation. Alicia gasped in total shock, realizing she had less than 6 months left to live. The room went dead silent as the shock of the news finally started to sink in. Practice was totally over after that, because all the fun and hype just died once they realized how bad Fall's condition really was. Just like that, the final day of their training camp ended on a super sad note. On the ride back, Sophia whispered to Cyril, asking if that was the real reason Fall didn't want them joining the student council. Cyril told her she was right, and even if they threw everything they had at it, fixing her was totally impossible. Sophia argued that she didn't get any fancy treatment because she was just a regular girl who happened to be helped by an earl. Cyril finally drops the truth, revealing her real name is Falcuna, and proving she's got it all wrong. Sophia was totally shocked and asked if he'd been hiding the truth the whole time, while the image of her as a weak princess in a crown flashed through her mind. Cyril confirmed it was true, explaining she's not just royalty, but might actually have to leave them all behind one day. He swore he only kept the secret so she'd treat the girl like a normal friend, but Sophia was absolutely fuming and demanded to know why he'd hide something that big from. Cyril hung his head in shame, admitting that even though he thought he was helping, he totally messed up by keeping her in the dark, and was ready to take whatever punishment she threw his way. Sophia got right in his face, looking totally crushed and super mad as she tried to process what he just admitted. Sophia spoke softly but meant business, telling him to finally lift his head up. She was definitely caught off guard, but she knew he'd always put her first no matter what, and after everything they'd been through, she wasn't about to start doubting him now. Cyril notices she's finally found her confidence, but she tells him it's only because he's always there, making him blush while he realizes just how modest she really is. While he's talking, he notices she's grabbing his sleeve without even thinking, showing just how much she's starting to lean on him. He gently grabbed her hand, and even though she apologized for holding on, he just squeezed her hand even tighter. He gave her a warm smile and promised he wasn't going anywhere, telling her he'd stay by her side forever. Sophia asked him through her tears if he'd really stay, and once he promised to be by her side until the very end, she finally felt like she could relax. Then she promised that if that's how it's gonna be, she's staying right by his side forever too. She leaned in for a hug and whispered, "Poor Fall," her heart totally breaking for her new friend. Inside the carriage, the maid quickly looked away, acting like she totally missed her lady and the butler having a secret moment.